All right, would court please come to order? We've got a quorum present, all of our members are present, and the court's duly called. Is there a motion to open court?
Second, and all legal notices have been posted.
And did somebody move?
I made it.
You moved it. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Bailiff, please open court.
All rise. Dallas County Commissioners Court is now in session for the June 2017 term. The Honorable Clay Lewis Jenkins presiding. Please remain standing for the invocation.
And our invocation will be given today by a guest of Commissioner Price.
Judge, Commissioners, this morning we're very pleased to have with us the Reverend Clayton F. Allard II. Reverend Allard has been the senior pastor of Oak Cliff Presbyterian Church for the past 14 years. Oak Cliff Presbyterian Church is a stably integrated congregation representing the diversity of its neighborhood for over 40 years at the corner of Rendleston Road and Hampton Road. Founded in 1890, the congregation has been a light and a witness through all of the changes of Oak Cliff and Dallas. Subtext means they didn't run. Pastor Allard has a passion for the ministry of reconciliation in Dallas and began the Oak Cliff Great Banquet Community 12 years ago as a place where all people can come together and experience the love of Jesus the Christ and live into the truth that we are one at the cross of Jesus. Pastor Allard has 5 children, 2 girls, 3 boys, who range from 14 to 27. Pastor, thank you for joining us this morning.
Let us pray. Lord, who promises in the fullness of time to bring all things back together again, things in heaven and things on earth, we bring to you this city, broken, human, divided, north and south, divided by race, divided by class, divided in so many ways. We bring you this court also divided by party, by region. We thank you, Lord, that even in this time, in this divided city, in this divided nation, even in this divided room, that you can bring all things together. Bring us together this day in the spirit of unity. Bring us together in the spirit of trust. Bring us together to do the best for this city, to do the best for this county, to do the best for all of the people within it. Strengthen us, Lord, and strengthen the commissioners, Lord, to do your will and to be willing to work together even across those divisions, to be able to do all that you command them to do. Thank you for this full day, for all of the work that you will do, and for your grace that abounds in this moment as it does in all moments. Strengthen us, bless us to do your will, for we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Allard.
Liberty and justice for all.
And we have 2 resolutions today from Commissioner Price.
Judge, I'm going to do the resolution, but I do want to do a motion, if you don't mind, to suspend the agenda.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I will do the resolution. The first one is Harold Edwards. Harold, and your delegation, if you'll come forward as he is approaching the lectern. It says, whereas Dallas County has been fortunate to have an exemplary employee base by their skill, dedication, and extraordinary talent serve the citizens and county well. And whereas Harold L. Edwards was born in Fort Myers, Florida, graduated from Southern Plantation High School in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, earning a Bachelor of Science degree in Social Science at Texas College in the deep piney woods of East Texas. And whereas upon graduation from Texas College, Mr. Edward was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Army. He received extensive military training at the Command and General Staff College in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and the Logistics Management College in Fort Lee, Virginia. During his military commitment, Mr. Edward was stationed in Maryland twice, Georgia, Texas twice, Oklahoma, and the Republic of Korea twice. Mr. Edwards' training assignments took him to Germany, Belgium, Michigan, the Netherlands, and Utah. Mr. Edwards is a graduate of the U.S. Army Ordnance School, Officer Basic and Advanced Maintenance Management courses, U.S. Army Logistics Management College, and the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College. Mr. Edwards is a disabled veteran. He completed his military commitment and retired as a major from the U.S. Army Reserves on September the 1st, 1998. And whereas Harold L. Edwards came into the employ of Dallas County in August of 1989 as a contracts manager in the Facilities Management Department, he moved to the Juvenile Department in October 1992 as a field probation officer in the Southwest Unit, subsequently serving in placement services as a placement specialist and in contract services as a program specialist, where he currently serves. And whereas Harold L. Edwards is married to Linda Edwards, the proud father of Tamika and Harold Jr., has 10-year-old twin granddaughters, Jada and Jade, and swears that they are the next track Olympians. He has an older half-sister, Denise, who lives in Huntsville, Alabama. He enjoys the brotherhood of his beloved Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, as well as the Meiji Temple number 45 as a proud Mason. Therefore, be it resolved that the Dallas County Commissioners Court does hereby, and with great pride, join with the family, friends, and co-laborers of Harold Edwards as he assumes a well-deserved retirement after 27 years of dedicated service. And be it further resolved that his work ethic, strong community bonds, and his outstanding example of good citizenship be emulated by all who come after him. And I so move.
And I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Court. Mr. Edwards is such a humble and dedicated servant, because even when we were standing up here, he said, "Do I have to speak?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you do." He is one of those people who are a quiet, tour-de force. But one thing comes clearly: if you spend more than 5 minutes talking to him, he is going to talk about his future granddaughters, and he does think they are going to be Olympians, but because he is with them day in and day out. So we are so appreciative. He will absolutely be missed. He is a wonderful example of all that is good with our department, that great dedication, that commitment to putting youth first. He's an outstanding addition to the department, and we're sorry we're going to lose him. But I'm going to let Ms. Carruthers say a few words about him. She directly supervises him.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Edwards is a man of few words. I'm going to attempt to be a woman of few words. It has simply been a pleasure to manage him in the contract services division, if that is such a thing as managing him. He is a man of military precision. That's all I can say. He brings that to his job every day. He brings that with him on his assignments in the division. I mean, everything is detailed. Everything is done with a certain amount of pride and dedication. And that's something that is very hard to obtain these days. I've been blessed, as a supervisor with him, because he made my job easy. He really has. And I had a very seasoned team coming on, and Mr. Edwards, I wanted to get to know that team. I knew they had a wealth of knowledge, especially him, and I wanted to get to know them, find out what I could add to them because they were adding so much to me. And I sat down with him and I said, well, you know, I want to bring morale. I want to do those types of things. What can I help you do? How can I assist you? He simply looked at me and said, Ms. Carruthers, you simply just have to make sure my check is in the bank every 2 weeks. So that's my most memorable moment. And he's been true to that. That's his personality. Not too many words, a whole lot of do. He is a family man. He's a man that you don't have to follow up with or check behind. And if I could say anything today, he has been a good steward of taxpayer dollars. He makes sure that in that contract services division, when he goes out to work, that those providers are doing what they said they were going to do in that contract for our kids. And will be eternally grateful, and I appreciate him for giving me a couple of years more than he promised me when I started.
Major.
Good morning to the Commissioner's Court. Thank you for the resolution, and thank you to my co-workers from the Juvenile Department. I've enjoyed the 27 years and 10 months that I've been a part of Dallas County. I initially started upstairs on the 3rd floor with facility management as the contract manager, and I enjoyed that position. I enjoyed my total stay here at the county. And again, thank you very much for the resolution.
Thank you, Major.
In listening to the words you had to offer and the words of his coworker, I was watching the woman in orange, who I'm thinking is maybe his team member through all of this, and she's just there nodding her head, saying, "Yes, yes, yes, you got it all right," and that is the testimony to what real teamwork is all about. Thank you.
Sure. Come on up. Ms. Edwards. Oh, yeah,
Stand up.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Major. And the next resolution is Tim Martin. And I know some of the judges just got here. We did do a motion to suspend the agenda, and we will get to it. Mr. Martin, will you and your delegation come forward, please? And Tim's team, I'm sorry.
Yes. A lot of team members.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Thomas did tell me last week at the reception that he was going to be out of the city. So, but we got this taken care of. Whereas Dallas County takes special notice where an individual has given long and faithful service to Dallas County. And whereas Tim Martin is a native Texan, born in Hamlin and raised in Roby, where he attended Roby High School and then graduated from the University of Texas at Austin with a BBA in accounting and progressed to the title of certified public accountant and a member of the American Institute of CPAs. And whereas Tim Martin began his Dallas County career on January the 27th, 1986 as an auditor with the auditor's office, and from that point, Tim earned promotions to senior auditor, accounts payable supervisor, and assistant manager in pre-audit and payroll before being promoted to internal audit manager. And whereas as an internal audit manager, Tim was available for exhaustive meetings and interviews without adding staff. I wanted that to marinate. And was willing to work long hours, relinquishing vacation time to meet deadlines. And whereas as an internal auditor manager, Tim directed the internal audit staff in the daily operations of Internal Audit Division of County Auditor's Office, ensuring compliance with statutory, regulatory, and budgetary requirements, county policies and procedures, and internal controls. And whereas Tim is able to readily recognize internal control weaknesses and recommend compensating controls. He has been an asset to Dallas County as a diligent and steadfast example of integrity, knowledge, and dedication to excellence. And whereas Tim's vast historical knowledge enable him to identify operational, policy, audit, contractual, and compliance issues and resolve or recommend corrective action. The internal audit manager is required to maintain continued familiarity with county policies and procedures and applicable laws and regulations. Tim was able to achieve this competency efficiency with ease. And whereas Tim Martin is married to Zoraida. Okay. I was going to mess it up, Zoraida. Excuse me. A Mesquite High School teacher with whom he enjoys traveling extensively throughout the continental United States to view history and witness all of God's creation, but are none too thrilled with something called flying. Tim is the most dedicated and devoted Dallas County Cowboys fan to ever live in the great state of Texas. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Dallas County Commissioners Court does here recognize and extend sincere appreciation to Timothy Martin for 32 years of faithful and dedicated service, and further expresses best wishes on his retirement and the upcoming adventures and goals of his life. And I so move.
And I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Weston.
Judge, Commissioners, it is really a privilege and a respect today to be in front of you talking about Tim Martin. Tim is a professional person. Tim has trained many of us, including me, from the very beginning. The resolution said it all. If I may add is the comp time that is not really mentioned, recorded there, is a lot that Tim gave to the county. His professionalism, his integrity so above value, so high that nothing will really flinch him to any area. He's so independent, and then he's so objective in his day-to-day work. This character, this situation, really gave him a respect around the county, around our peers, also with outside auditors, with independent auditors, and it is surprising, the Dallas County Auditor's Office has many times, okay, we will rely on your audit. Most of them, some of them are just last year or year before, the federal auditors came in and said, if the Dallas County auditors did it, we will accept the report. It was to that extent that we get such kind of credit due to people like Tim. The other is, all this is because of his passion to the citizens. It cannot be compared to anything. That's what reflects from Tim. The other is his humanity is beyond measurement. If there is anybody in Dallas County Auditor's Office who contributed or who did something, who is the Santa, you just by de facto say it is Tim. That's how it is. Daryl is out today for anniversary, and Tim wanted me to be brief, just like Darrell, so I will be trying to be as much as possible. Me and Tim grew together on the past 20 years, but there is one thing which differs us, OU versus Texas game. Other than that, we are always together. With that, I'll give Tim a chance to speak.
Thank you, Honorable County Judge, Commissioners. Commissioner Price, thank you for honoring me today with that resolution. I really appreciate the words that you spoke. Weston, thank you also for the words. I thank my team for coming today to support me. Just last week they had a party for me, and I just can't express the gratitude enough for my staff. And
it wasn't a party, it was a testimonial.
Why wasn't it a party?
But they are thoroughly knowledgeable, and I have full confidence in them as I depart that they will be able to carry on internal audit forward for the Dallas County citizens. And I do want to thank the citizens of Dallas County for giving me this opportunity the last 31 plus years. I feel like my responsibility is to them first and then to others. But also want to thank God for giving me a good, long, healthy life and this opportunity at Dallas County. Dallas County has been very good to me, and I'm very appreciative. And, I'd like to thank my wife as well for coming today, my better half. So she'll have a lot of...
Better three-quarters.
Yes, there you go.
Trying to help you out, too.
She'll have a lot of new opportunities for me to work on as I go into retirement. And, I want to thank y'all again. And I'm... extremely blessed, and so thank you so much.
Well, Tim, go ahead. No, yield.
Tim, well, Dallas County's been extremely blessed to have you. Your dedication to Dallas County is second to none. You have a quiet but very effective manner about yourself that gets things done. And, we've had an opportunity to work together many times, and I just really respect you and I appreciate all that you've done for Dallas County. So thank you.
Well, and then I said the other day, Tim began in field audit. And, some of us have been around. He's 32 years. I got 41, thereabout. And some of us remember, and I said this to his team the other day, he is the only guy, and I understand volume and math, but he's the only guy who can go out and look at a pile of gravel and can tell you how much is there, and how much is supposed to be there, and how much is gone. And I was just amazed. I mean, Tim has been great, and I think Mr. Weston said it a few minutes ago. Everything that has been difficult, even dealing with outside auditors, if it flowed through Tim, they didn't have any issue.
That's right.
He was able to ameliorate any of their concern. And so, as I close, Tim, I just want to say. I've always appreciated CPAs. Lately, I've had a different kind of affection.
Different kind of affection.
I just want you to know your profession does well. Okay, when it's not one way.
Yes.
Okay. We want to take a photo, and thank y'all, because he didn't want to come. We had to twist. I asked Janet Butcher to hold his last paycheck.
All right.
He said, "No, I just want to go quietly into the abyss." I said, "No way. Hold his check until he shows up at Commissioner's Court."
Well, and I just want to say, Tim, I didn't have the opportunity to work very closely with you, but for the bond task force, the bail bond task force, and your job was excellent as well, and we appreciate all your efforts there. And from a Cowboy fan to another one, I know it's not easy, and some years are better than others, but we're going to get there soon.
Yeah.
Thank you for all your work for Dallas County.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
flanking. We got the people from way back there, so we're going to be fine. Time here. Amen. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, some of you come up. Janet knows the routine. Some here, some come on up here. Come on.
What are they all afraid to come up here? Come on, guys.
Yes, somebody come up, flank up here.
Come on up here so that they can see you.
Yes.
Their cameras aren't that wide.
They had t-shirts.
Yeah, they had their team. The whole internal audit section has one. They got them for the party last week.
Yeah, come on.
You just move those chairs back.
I love your shirts.
Yeah, help her out, Jay. Got it? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
His team.
Good to see And while there, we did a motion to suspend the agenda, and we'll, Judge, I want to go ahead on and move to the other,
Yes,
to the
to the-
piece with regards to the both, I guess, judicial management, misdemeanor cite and release programs, because I got a lot of judges here. But right before we do that, as a point of personal privilege, I want to thank the. First, I want to thank the leadership of Dallas County, Commissioner Mike Cantrell and Dr. Teresa Daniels for getting the baton as it was passed. Dallas, Tarrant, and Travis County was recognized as the 2017 Best of Texas Award. In the 16 years, the Best of Texas Award, hosted by the Center for Digital Government, recognized public sector professionals and local government organizations for their contribution. This year's winner for Best IT Collaboration Among Organizations was presented to Dallas, Tarrant, and Travis County for their efforts to build TechShare Prosecutor, a web-based case management system through a shared services agreement with the Texas Conference of Urban Counties. The scope of the project also including building a law enforcement agency portal and a defense attorney portal in attendance to accept these awards. And so I want to thank Craig Marzi, Major Victor, and all of those who are associated. If you've been
Police, yeah.
Yeah, if you've been associated with this project, can I ask you to stand up, please?
Chief.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Commissioner. And this is not only this project, but also JCMS was recognized for the same thing, Best in Texas. And I just want to say thank you, and thank you to Commissioner Daniel, and thank you, Commissioner Price.
Right, and the reason I use that, Judge Birmingham, is a segue into why I want to talk to you. Come on up.
And while he's coming up, can I take a point of privilege real quick?
And Judge Mulder?
Alejandro, would you stand up for just a second? Because he'll end up leaving, but Alejandro, this will be his last court date for us. He's going to become the budget director for the county of Denton, for Denton County. So I just want to say thank you for your service. Best of luck, and we know you'll do a great job, so thank you for all
Oh,
you've
we
done.
know you're going to do great,
Yeah,
Mr.
absolutely.
Alejandro. I mean,
May I follow-
Carlos.
May I follow that very quickly, because as one good person leaves, another good person is coming. Samanji Best is new on my staff. Yesterday was her first day, so I know that she'll be able to follow in his footsteps and do well for Dallas County.
You bet.
Judge Birmingham, members of the court, on here is the judicial management misdemeanor cases. It's really got, cite and release, and Judge Mulder probably talk a lot about that. But what brings us to this point was apparently the judiciary, and just to give a real quick background, years ago, under an assistant district attorney by the name of Terry Moore, we began to deal with this whole issue called dry writs, because law enforcement was taking and they were placing people in our facility, and we were detaining them, and as such, while we detained them, they were basically taking their time with kind of filing the cases. And I said taking their time because at the time I think that Ms. Moore bought this, we were dealing with this issue. They had they had a ton of cases that had not been filed. And so what we basically said, to them is that, that's, unacceptable. Misdemeanors were doing 3 days, felonies were doing 5 days. After that, not only were we basically releasing them, law enforcement came to us, and I see DPD here, who is number one, basically said, we need more time. Apparently, they changed that and went from 3 days to 5 days, I guess, for misdemeanors, and about 10 days or thereabout for felonies. We recently did a call and a snapshot, and it came up in jail population the other day, because we were concerned, given not only the impending concerns that have been expressed in Texas, but especially in Dallas County. So what we're basically saying to you is that apparently the policy was changed, and the only way the policy, I know law enforcement made the ask, the request, but the court, we had no knowledge until we began to look at certain portals in our doer bucket, people who were still remaining in our custody, and cases had not been filed. So apparently, judges are the only ones who can make the decision to give more time. And on the aggravated cases, we understand, to some degree. The problem is that some of these cases are not aggravated, and so we have some concern. In fact, I got one today where I guess the DA's office has asked that this person's been in here since the 14th and should be, as we've gone through all of these releases, and they're asking that this person not be released. They've been in here since 2014. And so I got some real issues. That's not a dry writ issue. That's another issue. So, Judge, that's judges. That's what, I think this court needs some explanation on, when did y'all change this? What does the universe look like of people who are not with aggravated offenses who are succumbing to what we call dry writs?
The best way that I can explain it is, Commissioner, that if this court is under the impression that there are people in the jail who have not had access to a lawyer or who are not having access to a bond, then that is incorrect. These people, within 24 hours, do have access to a lawyer, and they do have access to a bond. The dry writ issue is separate and apart from that.
That's exactly
so what I want to focus in on, Commissioner, is the idea that the quicker that we can get information to the judges, about a person's ability to make bond and what their risks are, which is a common theme as we go through this pretrial department, judging those based on their risk and not on their resources. The quicker we can get that information to the magistrates, the better decisions that they can make, if it's not during county hours, about a person's ability to make bail. So the idea that the dry writ process has to somehow be complete before they're considered to have an attorney or before they're considered for a bail is incorrect. And so I want to be clear about that.
But then if you have basically created a policy that says that you've given law enforcement, whether it's 5 or 10 days, I understand the lawyer, that's separate. I guess what I'm concerned about is that if someone has a lawyer and you've given law enforcement 5 days on a misdemeanor or 10 on a felony, and the lawyer files a writ, a dry writ, in 3 days, are you telling this court that you're going to release them? And if you release them, you've given law enforcement 5 days to do it. And the reason, again, I segue coming off of those prosecutor modules and texture module, law enforcement, we've got this technology. I don't understand why somebody's sitting there, either 5 on a misdemeanor, 10 on a felony, given where we are on technology. I'll see you, Elise, want to jump up. Come on.
I'm sure Elise will, but
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sir, Commissioner.
Are those individuals being charged? Do they have a charge pending?
No. They're on the way to having a charge pending.
Okay. I'm just making sure.
That's my
Potentially.
Sure.
However, we will have some information about why they're there. In other words, they're arrested for offense A, B, or C. We may know after we're provided, and when I say we, the judges are provided perhaps with their criminal history. Perhaps once we get this pretrial division set up, we'll know more about their ties to the community so we can make a better decision about their bond.
Well, I guess that's what concerns me when you said, they're entitled to a bond.
Yes, sir. And some of the folks that are on your list.
How do you determine that? Are you going based on what they're being investigated on and the potential charge would be?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that's how the bond decisions
All
are
right.
being made right now. There's a guideline, non-binding bond schedule, plus whatever information is available to the judge, which at this time, at the magistrate level, or even at the magistrate level, is very, very minimal. And that's what we're trying to do, is be able to gather more information so we can make a better informed decision. But right now, they have the offense. They might have the criminal history if the police officer says it, and that's about it.
But if law enforcement knew that they were going to be bonded out, in other words, like Commissioner Price says, if you're giving them 5 or 10 days, law enforcement would probably come forward with some kind of narrative explaining exactly what they're looking at that person for and potentially charging them.
They do. And I want to say, too, that one of the reasons why the extension has been given by at least for some of the felony cases, is, and I'm not sure if y'all are concerned about that or not, but what I want to say is that the idea is to cull the cases better and more thoroughly at the beginning as opposed to at the end, so that the police are having an opportunity to talk to witnesses who may have exculpatory or inculpatory information. Maybe they want to gather source surveillance, the advent of cell phones. In other words, and this is going to be key because it's going to tie into what this court is considering with regard to attorneys' fees later on. There's a much more information that goes into a case in 2017, cell phones, DNA, videotape statements, all of those things that wasn't necessarily here in 2008, things like that. So this is all about I guess my biggest concern, reading some of the stuff that I read in the media, hearing some of your questions, was that there were people, the idea was that they were just thrown into a dungeon, that they were asking for help, and that the judiciary was silent. They are given a lawyer if they fill out the right paperwork, which they are doing. And they are also given a bond. They have the right to have that bond heard by an elected judge very soon thereafter, but they are given a bond at that time.
Judge.
We need to make that decision better and earlier on in the process, which is what I'm hopeful that this pretrial department will do.
Judge Mulder, you wanted to add something?
Please.
Yes, I did want to add, in addition to, we also have had for years the pretrial release program that was headed up by Ron Stretcher that would interview people to see if they were able to be released on their own recognizance. Now, this request from law enforcement didn't come until the summer of 2014. It was first addressed in the misdemeanor courts, August of 2014. It was only stretched from 3 days to 5 in January of 2015.
Okay.
So it hasn't been a lengthy period of time.
Who in law enforcement made the request? What agency?
Blankenbarker, is that right?
No, what?
Dallas Police Department, and through the DA's office as well. They backed
Okay,
them with that.
DPD and the DA, and what was the stated reason for the?
To have more time to complete a due investigation, basically, to do a more thorough investigation. Okay. So they wanted more time to be able to find videos from convenience stores. They wanted more time to track down witnesses. And the time periods were just so narrow, especially with officers being out or their different shifts and whatnot, and the time frame. So at the DA's office, we spend an exorbitant amount of time constantly emailing law enforcement about all the cases that are coming up on the writ list. We send out multiple emails of cases that are coming up from the week. We send emails to all the law enforcement agencies of their cases that are coming out the next day, every single day, and we're constantly managing them, because for the misdemeanor cases, not only do we have to accept them in our system, but they also have to be, basically the complaint information has to be signed and basically in the county clerk's office, and they have to actually do their official filing for it to be considered filed for the 5-day writ list.
So before 2015, for misdemeanors, when it was 3 days, I guess we got 100% of them done in 3 days, and some fell through the cracks.
They were dry written.
Or dry written.
We can also look at some of the cases. They end up, basically, it's one of those things that it just puts pressure down the road in terms of the days, because it puts pressure on us because we need time to process them. When they come in the door, there's issues there, and we can't follow up. It doesn't give us enough time to follow up on the
Ms.
cases.
Lindbergh, I appreciate that, and Judge, Judge Moore, I know you're going to say something, but, I got a very basic question. If the investigation is not complete, why are they arresting them? I mean, we let them just sit there?
They have probable cause to arrest them, but we want to make sure.
And if they got that probable cause, you mean tell me it takes them 5 days as opposed to 3?
Commissioner, what we need is 24-hour intake like they have in Harris County.
Look, nobody on this court has been down that road longer than I have, taken the delegation, I got all of that. But in the meantime, what Ms. Moore did was say,
it wasn't Terry Moore. She was gone in 2014.
I got it, but it really started before 2014. I know y'all want to say, Ron Stretch pretrial. It started with Terry Moore. Terry Moore began going down that that whole issue of people sitting there not filing cases.
Well, when people are dry writted out after 3 days and the police haven't filed a case yet, or if they bond out, then ultimately when the case is filed, if the original capias is issued, then they're rearrested and put in the jail. And the only true solution to solve that problem was to stretch it to 5 days or revamp the whole system to a 24-hour intake. So that's what we were dealing with as judges, and being good partners with the DA's office and giving them the 2 extra days to file on misdemeanor cases. But when people are asked when they're magistrated in jail, that's when they're booked in, magistrated, do you want a court-appointed lawyer? If they say yes, they get one in 24 hours. That lawyer can always come to a judge and ask for a PR bond. I signed personal recognizance bonds every day in misdemeanor court for people to get out. But the problem is that we haven't had a risk assessment tool to determine if someone is at risk of being a danger to the community or not. And that's why the judges, we've started our pretrial diversion program that will have an executive director and 30 pretrial officers to really solve this issue.
I appreciate that. That's not the reason why we've started. We've gone down this road again for several years. We've attempted to penetrate this veil. That's not the reason, but it's the right reason.
Well, there was an issue. Police departments used to be able to file their cases without the person in tow. In other words, they could file their case, so they could go out and build their case, and they can. Okay, well, at one point they couldn't file it unless they had the individual with them.
We request a bond or a body unless the statute of limitations is about to run. So we want to, but obviously there's grand jury referrals where the cases come to us and we evaluate them before.
Right, but generally you prefer to have the body in tow with the case.
Right, and that's the way they did it in Tarrant County, and that seemed to be very effective. The thing is that so many cases come to us, and there's more questions that need to be answered, and to try to get with an officer, you don't know whether or not, sometimes it'd be nice if all of the cases on their face of it were very clear whether to accept or not, but a lot of times more information is needed from the law enforcement agencies, and you can't make that determination, and you're basically stuck with, also, especially when it comes to family violence misdemeanor cases, what we do is we contact all of the victims in those cases to see if they're going forward. And the problem was there were many cases that were dismissed down the road because we couldn't prove those cases because we needed the victims on board. And so our effort to have more time allows us to have a victim advocate contact every single victim on a misdemeanor family violence offense that never happened before. And then we know whether or not we can go forward on the case.
It's been 2.5 years since the time was expanded. What's been learned, or what are the results? It has the additional time shown to
cases much better today than we were before, and we're able to make
more
more informed decisions on the cases and
how
have
do
less.
you know that?
I mean, we reject and return a lot of cases.
Well,
and that's what should happen. But Commissioner, one of the questions you're asking is why aren't they just building their case and then filing it and arresting the person?
Right.
Well, but police come up on these. They catch, they catch them in the act.
Okay.
So they arrest them and then they go out and build their case. So it takes a while to build that case.
But if they catch them in the act, why would it take anything other than 72 hours?
Well, like they said, getting the cameras and all of the.
Well, and we have a system.
And you might have
that we've been building on for years and years. Excuse me, Commissioner.
Domestic. Everybody wants to go domestic because that's the knee jerker. I'm talking about that's not the majority of these cases.
You may have some sort of an assault where yes, you can catch the person relatively quickly, but it takes them a little bit of time to file the case. And one thing to remember here is, unlike Tarrant County, the city of Dallas has no jail. And so we are the city of Dallas's jail. So when people are arrested, that's where they go. There's not a case.
No. Tarrant County will not accept a case.
Right, because they have a city jail.
No. Everybody goes to Mansfield, Judge. Know what you're talking about. That's not it. They won't take the case until it's filed.
Actually, I spoke to Tarrant County yesterday, and it depends on, they don't have a Tarrant County policy per se, but what each individual department has. So Fort Worth and Arlington PD have their own policies on how many days. So I believe Fort Worth has a policy where they have to have their officers file between 7 and 10 days. They have to file the case, and Arlington, I think, has 3 days. And so then once that case, they have that internally within their jail, and then it goes to the Tarrant County DA's office, the Tarrant County Jail. But they have an interim jail that they are basically housed at that gives them time between the time that they make the arrest and the time they actually make it into the doors of the Tarrant County Jail. And at that point, it's about the same amount of time.
Ms. Richardson, when we took and did a call, did a snapshot, we saw, based on what I'm bringing up, some of these concerns, and we've seen them, the trajectory go north.
Yes. You've asked us to check into that. There are a number of issues at play. Number one, we're always mindful of this whole issue about debtors' prison or about people remaining in jail and not having the opportunity because they don't have the resources to bond out. To give you some historical perspective, back when I was in the courts years ago, there's a 72-hour writ. So if your client was sitting in jail, if your client was sitting in jail for longer than 72 hours, the lawyers would file a writ with the court. And one of two things would happen. Either that person would be released because the state chose not to file those charges, or the case would be filed. The process was changed later, and because of some of the reasons stated, there was a request by the DA's office and police department to extend the period of time to give them more time. This is the issue. You've got people sitting in jail for long periods of time, and in some instances, those cases are not filed. So they're released. So you're sitting in jail. You can't afford to bond out, okay? And then the case you get released because the case isn't filed. And we've even had instances where a couple of years later, before the statute of limitation runs, the DA's office decides to file it, and these people get picked up again. So yes, absolutely, our goal is always to go ahead and if you have an attorney, but there are some judges that if the case hasn't been filed, they don't want to do a PR bond. There are some judges who state that they don't have jurisdiction. So that's the concern that we have, again, on low-level, minor offenses, that people are sitting in jail, they can't bond out, and in some instances the case isn't even filed. So then you get out, you lost your job, and the whole 9 yards. I'm very mindful and very respectful. These judges do a great job. But as a defense attorney and concerned about the people that we represent, it's like at least with the 72 hours, you had at least 3 days to get out. But now in some instances, it's longer than that, and you don't count weekends or holidays. So that is our concern about that. I understand the state wanting to get the information together, but it's not filed, and there have been instances where we've tried to get them out on PR bond. Not these judges, but there's some judges that I don't know that I had jurisdiction, or let me wait until to see what the case is.
So, Ms. Richardson, now there used to just be a few things that were 10 days, and now I think there are nearly 36 things that are 10 days on the felony side. Would your solution be that some of those things, the day should be moved back? Would your solution be everything should go to 3 days? If you were in charge, what would you do?
That's a loaded question. If I were in charge, it would be a shorter period of time. But I certainly understand the concern of the judges.
So would it be 10 days for some things? Capital murder, would that be fair?
Of course.
Okay. So then some things you'd want it shorter.
That's 30 days. That's a longer period of
Right.
time.
So would you maybe, I don't want to put you on the spot today, but could you write the court your ideas, anyone who wants to, write us your ideas of if we should stay with the 10 days, or if you need to stay, it's your decision, if you need to stay with the 10 days, or if on, say, 10 of these nearly 3 dozen charges, we go down to 5 days on those. If on 5 of those misdemeanor charges, you go back to 3 days on those.
Judge,
if not.
I do think, and Judge Mulder was correct, and Judge Birmingham, that we are planning to put some processes in place that may address that. But they're not in place right now.
Exactly.
And so we're talking about 10% of your jail population currently that falls in this category. And it's like $1 million.
Category, which is the subject of those lawsuits.
And pre-trial.
Exactly. We're talking about misdemeanor cases, but it's important to note that our court manager, Pat Johnson, gets a dry writ list every day of people who are in jail, contacts the DA's office. Are y'all going to file this case? What are y'all going to do? Then if they don't, that list for release goes to the sheriff's department. There's a lot of moving parts to this.
Correct. And knowing that, Judge, one of the things that we've been working on is the new, pre-trial. Yes. And this has been happening for how long? At least 5 years.
No.
More than that.
No.
What specifically?
She's talking about, I guess she's talking about the dry writs. I just got through saying, she just got through saying.
Since the dawn of time.
Okay. So, it's been a
since
problem
we started a
that
modern
should have been addressed.
Division.
Well, we have been addressing this at least, as I said, I go back as far as Terry Moore in terms of managing this population.
Yes. But it hasn't been addressed in a comprehensive manner.
Well,
that's why we're here.
Yeah, it hasn't because we haven't gotten to where we are on the pre-trial piece.
So this
exactly,
time,
Commissioner, exactly.
But they have expanded. That's what. Did you hear me? They have expanded. People have gone
expanded.
The number of days that people
correct. So
from 3 to 5 on what we're talking about, misdemeanor offenses, criminal trespass.
Let's go there.
Driving with a suspended license, which in Austin they have a cite and release program for that as well. Just FYI, we don't have.
We're lucky to get it for marijuana, but that's a whole other story.
We'll go there in a minute.
Yeah, we'll go there in a minute. My point still is that we've got people sitting
in jail waiting for their case to be filed. If they cannot qualify for pretrial release under the current pretrial release program, then they are sitting.
And by the way, the judges set the standards for pretrial release.
We do. In January of 2015, we went from 3 days to 5 days at the request of law enforcement.
So what you're saying now, though, is that 5-day time period isn't quite getting the job done, and so so now there's the revamping of the pretrial program.
Well, we haven't been asked to revisit the program by anyone until it came up in Jail Pop. My husband was having oral surgery that morning, so I couldn't be there. So we have not been asked to revisit this. It is on our agenda, and we certainly will.
But in the
Well, let us ask you then to work together with Ms. Richardson, the DA, and your felony counterpart, Judge Birmingham, and revisit it and see if, like you mentioned, criminal trespass or driving on a suspended license. Do we really need to put a person at taxpayer expense in jail for 5 days for driving on a suspended license? In most cases, I wouldn't think we do we?
That is
you're precisely where I am.
That is precisely, depending on, okay, a bond is set for that person. If that person cannot afford a lawyer, they are appointed one within 24 hours. That lawyer, if a lawyer comes to me and says, within, the next day says, here's a person with no criminal history who's in jail on a driving while suspended license, will you PR bond him out? I would say absolutely. We judges don't want to keep people in jail who are too poor to afford a bond.
License, I mean, aren't most people on a suspended license, their license is suspended because they don't have the financial wherewithal to pay the fines so they can get their license back. So
yes, that's a DPS issue, and I do believe that is probably unconstitutional.
Well, that's the reason we're...
Yes.
So could we maybe work together to find a way for offenses like that as opposed to a domestic violence or something to move those...
Well, there's
a broad
also
range.
suspension of driver's license for not having insurance and causing wrecks, DWIs. I mean, there's a lot of...
Sure.
You just can't blanket say...
But working together, they could come up with a plan.
We are reinventing the pretrial wheel, so to speak, and we are doing our best. But these are wonderful ideas, and certainly we are incorporating this into our new pretrial division with diversion. But we've got to have that risk assessment procedure to determine, whether a person is a risk to society. But we certainly don't want to keep poor people in jail who are not a threat to society. Absolutely. There isn't a judge down there who wants to.
And I think, we are on the same page, and I'm glad that all of you are working together. I know that, the DA, the judicial, and of course, Ms. Richardson is working on this. Mr. Heichel has been instrumental in coming out with a plan that hopefully we'll talk later about in the budget as well with Mr. Brown, on how we can change the current system into a system that is fair for everyone. And these kind of loopholes can be close to the maximum we can.
Yes, absolutely. From the DA's perspective, we want to be fair to everyone, but we also want to make sure that we're protecting the community. And obviously, with the risk assessment, you'll be able to make sure that people are not in jail who shouldn't be in. Yes, Commissioner.
I love y'all. Y'all always throw that up. We're talking about we're talking about criminal trespass, people going in. I mean, we've gone through this before, and everyone throws that up. I understand the aggravated offenses. I understand the domestic. But we're talking about the reason we're in this lawsuit is not because of those offenses.
We want to make sure that we get it. We want to make sure we get it right. We don't want to accept cases where we think that the cases should not be accepted, and it puts us in a bind because we don't get the cases sometimes until the day the person is written out. We ask law enforcement to get it to us as soon as possible. We ask them to get it to the day before, but the reality of the situation is that we don't get the cases until that morning that they're going to read out, and we're in a complete panic to try to process the cases and make sure that the people that need to stay in jail, the people whose cases need to be filed are filed, and the people that should be released are released. And we do everything we can to make sure no one's sitting languishing in jail. We're working the writ list constantly. It is the constant focus of the entire intake grand jury section. We have multiple emails going out to law enforcement agencies internally, to law enforcement officers to get us this information, to bring us this. We are not just sitting back and saying, we're going to languish, let someone in jail. For misdemeanors, we are working it as tightly as we possibly can, and we just don't want someone to get out who shouldn't get out, and we want to make sure that everyone that should get out should get out.
There you go. Last thing I'm going to say is, that our consultant, every month tells us the number of individuals who are in that jail that have no new offenses and didn't have offenses.
But that's not the dry writ list.
Oh, no,
if they don't
I
have
got
if they don't have a case, we're not holding them at all.
No, I got it. But I'm just saying I'm telling you, at the end of the day, that's.
But if they don't have a new offense, then they're either a probation violation or a parole violation or something else. It's not a new case. It's not a dry writ that's holding them.
But what's fair? Nobody up here questions your work ethic or intent of any of you. What's fair for y'all working together to come back with some proposed idea? Ultimately, we recognize this is a judge decision, but what's a fair thing working together for y'all to come back, looking at these and seeing if there's a way to improve and revamp? Understanding the diversion program, which we're all for the diversion program, but beyond diversion, these issues of numbers of days, we know just from everyone's human experience, if you give someone 5 days on a certain thing, they'll take 5 days, and it's not because they're lazy, it's because they have so much work to do that the things that they need to do before that, they'll prioritize that before that. There is a component of people waiting to the last minute, some people, and that is evidenced when you go to the post office on April the 15th and you see a 3-hour line for the post office. So we know that happens too. But we're not critical of any department, including DPD. What's a fair amount of time? Is it August to come back with something? Is it July?
I definitely think so. And I think that we can explore, culling out certain offenses for numbers of days. We'll have to get with the DA's office and the PD's office. But also, you have to understand, too, is that, especially in criminal law, the judges, many cases aren't brought to their attention until the lawyer, if the person has a lawyer, files that request for a PR bond or the writ of habeas corpus. So yes, we will absolutely get moving on this. Judge Birmingham and I are happy to head this up and meet with the DA's office to get it done.
So our first meeting's August 1st, and is that good, or do you want the second meeting to bring back something?
How about an update August 1st if we can't get it figured out before then?
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we'll wait.
Well, and then, I want something to be clear. I don't think the pretrial will be the panacea, but nevertheless, we're going to have to change some of the procedures, Commissioner Perez, like you've been saying, MOU and things like that, who qualifies, who doesn't. But I feel very confident that for the first time, we have all the players at the table, and we can change this and make it better. So thank you all for your work.
Thank you.
I know that we've been mentioning it in CJAP for quite some time, and I'm glad to finally see it coming forward.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Well,
You want to jump
thank
into
you.
site
No,
and release, the same?
Yeah,
players?
let's just go ahead on, because we have some of the same group for cite and release. Not you, Judge Birmingham. I don't think you're going to do cite and release. But okay. But with cite and release.
We have Chief Tittle.
I wanted to, Chief.
Chief Tittle, Elise, Judge Mulder, and we just do a recap of what we did
Yeah, I'm just trying to find out where are we on cite and release. If you got all those issues, Judge Mulder, I've been getting your emails.
Yes,
Where
sir.
are we? Where are we?
We
this
have
was briefed yesterday at CJAP, and we have been working on that. So, Judge.
We have a system in place. The DAs have been totally committed to creating a process that will work. Captain Tittle?
No,
Chief Tittle. So, I'm sorry, pardon me. Chief Tittle has been dedicated to it. Etho Pugh and Jeff Segura with CJAB have been totally committed to it. So we have a process in place. We are working out the kinks with regard to placement of positions and funding
Could you give
for
just
certain
a very
things.
short synopsis of exactly what are you talking about? When you say
I'm going to let Ms. Lindberg talk about that.
There's a lot of confusion as to what this is. This is not a ticket for misdemeanor marijuana. This does not change the penalty range for marijuana. All of the same penalties for possession of marijuana are still in place. All of the potential diversionary programs for misdemeanor marijuana are still in place. Everything stays the same. The only thing that's different is that the officer on the scene, when he catches someone or she catches someone with a misdemeanor amount of marijuana, doesn't have to book that person in and arrest that person that day. Instead, they can give that person a citation to appear to be magistrated at a later date. And so the Code of Criminal Procedure, it's Article 14.06 C and D of the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, and it basically, the title of that section is Must Take Offender Before Magistrate. And so cite and release is only addressing when you basically magistrate someone, and it delays that process. And the idea behind it is that officers get out on the streets more faster, and that you're not booking in people for low-level misdemeanor marijuana, so you're not occupying jail space and you're not taking up jail dollars for people that are arrested for misdemeanor marijuana, and officers get back on the streets. So that's the philosophy behind it. And so from a DA's perspective, we just want to make sure that we have the correct identity of the person, because they're not basically live scanned or basically booked in that night. We want to make sure we got the right person that we prosecute down the road. And we're happy to make it work. We're happy to do whatever you all want us to do to make it work. And we're happy to partner with other parties.
Ms. Lindbergh, just for, everyone to understand, can you go through the procedure? They were going to have to fingerprint the individual at the time of the stop?
Absolutely. So, for example, an officer stops a person for misdemeanor marijuana. At that time, the person is going to basically get a form in terms of where to appear. It's going to basically say to come to, for example, County Court Number 4, Judge Mulder's court, on a particular day set in advance. And basically, the first person's going to be fingerprinted at the scene, and basically documentation is going to go to the county. It's going to go to DPD. DPD is going to file those cases. We're going to do everything but actually accept them. We're going to process them, see whether or not this is a case that we would accept. Basically, when the date comes where the person has to appear for the citation in Judge Mulder's court, those people basically will appear on a docket, and she will do all the magistration things that would have happened in the jail. They'll be live scanned, they'll be booked in, their prints again will be taken, and Judge Mulder at that time will be able to tell the person either the DA is not going to accept your case, you don't have to come back, or the DA is going to accept your case and you have to come back to this other court at this particular time. These cases, basically, when they go into the system, get spit out to all the different misdemeanor courts. So we never know what court these cases will be assigned to. She is going to handle the magistration, but that doesn't mean that the case is actually handled in her court. It is going to go to all the other county criminal courts. And the day the person appears, she'll be able to tell them, this is the court you go to for your first setting, just like someone who was booked into jail is going to be told, this is what court you go to for your first setting.
Making all of this, unless it's a tractor trailer, how many cases do we have in this that fit in this category, Chief?
Judge and Commissioners, thank you all so very much for this opportunity. To answer your question directly, about 36 offenses, 36 crimes per month in the city of Dallas, Dallas County.
No, in the city.
On Class A and B misdemeanor marijuana possession.
Okay. So again, that's it. And you represent, I think, about 60% the last time I looked at, in terms of people coming into our system, in terms of booking them in, et cetera. So I guess I'm back to the DA. How many, and the city of Dallas, by the way, is the only one that's doing this.
Correct.
But you're only talking about 36 cases.
Well, you are only talking about 36 cases, but when we talk about fairness and justice, if you go to Lakewood and Preston Hollow, and we were to go search the medicine cabinets of every house in Lakewood and Preston Hollow, we would find Xanax, we would find hydrocodone, we would find all kinds of drugs.
Find marijuana?
You'd find all kinds of drugs that doctors have legally prescribed. And then when you go to places where people don't have insurance,
I know where you were going.
you may find drugs that are not legally prescribed. But we've got people out there who are medicating themselves with marijuana as opposed to medicating themselves by going to a doctor. I just got back from a National Association of Black County Officials meeting where the discussion was on the opioid epidemic for people that had insurance who were getting these tremendous amount of opioid pills. So in my mind, I can't help but look at these marijuana offenses in a large extent, and it looks like the people, and I think DPD's doing a great job, but when I look out at marijuana, it looks like the people that get picked up tend to be people that are of color. They tend to be people that are of a lower socioeconomic scale, but we know that there's a broad use of marijuana across all races and across all socioeconomic scales.
You done kind of lost me, and especially NAPCO and opioid. Hell, that ain't never been our issue. We know the issue with regards to that. I am just trying to get into this whole issue of cite and release impact. If it's 36, about 36 a month. Just the amount of, and I know we're gonna have one-day diversion. Most people going in, coming out. So I'm just trying to do
a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And Judge, I mean, just for Commissioner Price, peace of mind. We have to be sure that the site of release, according to what I hear at CJAB, everybody's point is not only fair, but also we have to identify the right subject. And we will love for it to be a one-step program. However, they're going to have to go to you and then go to all the different courts, get assigned to all the different courts. Now, like Commissioner Price says, it's only 432 cases approximately during the year. So we'll be able to handle that with one clerk that will be put as a resource to help during this process.
Yes, and based on the CJAB meeting we had yesterday and talking with the other police departments who were present, and asking them, it is just the city of Dallas that has passed this, but it does seem as though they're watching us, the other cities that are in Dallas County, and I do believe that if this system we've come up with proves successful, they would be willing to present it to their city councils and have it passed. So we are in a revolutionary time period right now, going from paper to paperless, going from a criminal justice system where punishment was the only goal, where we have a system that is much more aware of our social ills and making a difference. So it's a very exciting time, and I think that this is something that we are all willing to work hard on, have worked hard on, and can create an example for the other cities in Dallas County that they could follow. And through this system, we could take those low-level crimes, like driving with a suspended license, and have it be cite and release also, possibly in the future. Well,
Judge, let me ask you.
Yes, sir.
There's certain, under the statute, there's only certain offenses now that you can do cite and release.
Right.
So any of the drugs that the judge was talking about a while ago, those aren't included. It's strictly marijuana now under the Health and Safety Code.
Correct.
And criminal mischief, trespassing, different things like that. But so we're limited by statute on what can be done under cite and release, and marijuana is what we're actually talking about today, correct? Right.
Yes, and as somebody who lives in East Dallas, I want to know who Judge Jenkins is visiting over there.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm teasing you, Judge.
Yeah, and the point I'm making is not that we should do it for all drugs. Yeah. The point I'm making is that we have whole neighborhoods of people that if you go up and down the street, you may find a Xanax in their house, and that's
Absolutely.
a mood-altering drug. They have a mechanism.
And you may find cocaine versus crack.
But they have a mechanism. But the difference, Commissioner, is they have a mechanism to get that legally, and other people with less means do not have a mechanism.
But if we all got it illegal, I'm still telling you, people get more time for crack than they do for cocaine. So, I mean, we know what that is.
But we're talking about cite and release for marijuana.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but you brought up opioids. That's it. Okay, got you. Well, I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you for all the work.
Thank you very much, and thank you to these
And just
wonderful
one final question for everybody in the audience. We'll be ready for October 1st, when the city of Dallas will be initiating the program, correct?
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
I know
Dave.
you're working hard, and we appreciate it. Mr. Heichel,
you very
thank you for your
much.
cooperation as well.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you,
Chief.
Judge.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Appreciate you
It's
coming.
good to see
No,
you, Chief Tittle.
yeah,
Say
thank you.
hello to Chief.
The North Texas Toll Authority, I have asked for it to be
Thank you, Judge.
passed until September the 5th, I think, or the 4th.
Yay.
So,
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
yeah.
They're still looking at the heights.
Right. And I understand under electronic filing process and procedures, I see the district clerk here, is the county clerk here? But it is my understanding, Ms. Petrie, that matter come July 1st is going to be a go forward and not going to have the encumbrances or the barriers that were historically anticipated. Is that correct? Okay. I didn't say that county clerk.
I didn't
That's the only
hear.
reason I put it on.
Yeah, but I didn't hear the date.
Oh, July, well, see,
Right.
July 1st is when they've got a,
Mandated,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they're mandated. So but what had come up in either sanitation or population, so many meetings are starting to run together, but there was a concern that we were not going to be ready with everything from purchasing the license, et cetera, that we weren't going to be ready to proceed or be compliant. Supreme Court says July 1st, and everything else said waiver, and I understand they're not granting any waivers, so it's my understanding that on July 1st, we're going to be ready to push the button. Okay. That's the only reason. I just wanted that. That was the reason I put that on there. Under the juvenile facility certification, staffing, other issues, that's going to migrate over into my to budget. And so what I'll do is I'll leave that kind of pending right now until we get the budget matters, Judge, and we can go back to presentations.
Well, we can go to the 85th Texas Legislative.
We're starting over the West now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Fine.
Real quick.
Mr. Thompson, we have the first case in Tarrant County.
All right, we've already, we had the first case they reported. We basically have put together, again, our West Nile prevention efforts. You can go to the next slide, Ryan, in English and Spanish. Go to the next slide. That's the surveillance report I sent to you last night. Let's go to the next slide. You can basically see CDC week 24 in terms of positive mosquito traps, as well as total 32 positive mosquito traps to date. And so we're at the top doc, top nurse here, in case you got any questions. But that's our report.
I tried to read your surveillance still.
go back to it.
See how we got more traps?
Yeah.
We definitely got more traps.
More traps
So we're
than
trapping-
started in 2002 all the way since we've increased. The number of our cities have definitely come on board in terms of trapping. I think the key point with the trapping is the fact that we're able to do the mosquito testing in our lab. And so as historically, when you look at it, most cities were sending their mosquito samples to the state, which took up to 10 days or more. And of course, when we increased the number of traps coming into our lab, we were able to have a quick turnaround.
And you're working with all cities in Dallas
All 25
County.
municipalities. We have weekly conference calls with our cities, and that's been ongoing. We've had Zika webinars, and so we're in contact almost daily, weekly with our cities.
Thank you for your efforts.
And 14 are still our partners.
14 are contracted cities. I guess the assumption is we run everything in Dallas County, but it's called home rule, but we work with the other municipalities.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. And we have the samples already.
Oh, yeah, I can't say that enough. We got plenty of mosquito repellent. We would encourage everybody to please use it.
And Mr. Thompson, one thing, in the past we have distributed this to all our senior centers in Dallas County.
We've been meeting one-on-one. I think I've been to all the senior centers myself, and we're definitely encouraging anybody to, we're going to be trying to get them out to our cities. And so we're doing a count right now. We don't have that many. We just got a small donation.
Not as many as they've done in the past, and that's the reason we've let him kind of take and be the distribution point as opposed
Definitely,
to
I think that's
now
fair.
we did. I'll get a list. We did get the distribution based on the court providing the mosquito dunks, and so we've gotten those out to most of our cities, mosquito dunks, and we're
And
working
this
on
is
it.
smaller because it's dry as opposed to a water-based.
No, we're smaller because it's a donated one. I didn't want to say that on there, but thank you for the donation. So I didn't want to, but yeah, we have plenty of those.
We'll get them out.
Okay, if we go to budget.
If we could do the
let's
legislative
do
update
legislative.
before
Yes.
the budget.
Okay,
Let's do the legislative
Yeah,
first.
Charles.
I think the horse should be in front of the carriage.
Thank you, Judge and Commissioners. In light of the budget discussion, I'll be as brief as possible. There were a number of actions that the state took that are going to both cost and save us money. As far as the state budget is concerned, they did reduce a lot of the grants that we get, HAVA funds, indigent defense, the big one, which was reduced 7%, which is a significant number for us. They did include in the budget full funding for LIRAP and TERP. However, the governor did veto that. So we, as a county, need to decide if that $6 fee that everybody pays for insurance is right for us to be charging, since we're not receiving it back from the state.
I move that it is not.
Well, is that going to be brought up again in the special session?
As far as I know, they won't be considering the budget in special session. So they could pass a bill that says that those monies must be appropriated, but if they're not in the budget, they can't appropriate them.
So that veto would not be overturned, by the way.
Right, right. At least for the next 2 years, that all the clean air funds they're just unallocated.
Well, and as we get into budget, and that's, everybody needs to be cognizant. That means that between that and what the city of Dallas has said in regards to those highway, freeway funding and all, we're going to have to make those decisions. And that's the reason I think the budget deal is timely. Same thing with staff. I mean,
It's in the budget.
Right, and there's no reason to sock our taxpayers for an extra $6 in North Texas when it's used to balance the budget for all 254 counties in the state.
I got that, but we're not going to have, what I'm saying is in terms of our Clean Air Task Force.
Right. Yeah, we're losing our money, and this is not a new thing, because even before Dr. Garcia and I got on the court, one of the first things that I was asked to work on is trying to get our LIRAP money back. And we got little tranches of it, but we never got the full amount for any year that our citizens were actually paying in for, as we were supposed to when the law was created. We were supposed to put in $6 because of our clean air non-attainment. And that money was supposed to circle through the state, touch home plate, come back to us, and be used to help people here. But they always took some of it, and many times took all of it. And this time finally promised to give it back, only to have the governor veto it. So it's just a shell game to get an extra $6 out of us to use somewhere else. So I'm all for getting rid of it.
If y'all could do it this month, that'd be great, because my truck's up for inspection. But
do that.
For the good news, NIPA did get what we call the bridge funding, the $8.3 million per year. That was a big win for Dallas County and the other 5 participating counties.
Yeah.
Going to our legislative proposals, we did pass 4 of our 8 proposals. 50% is a really good passage rate. The statewide passage rate was just under 22%. Our proposals include getting rid of a defunct levy district, allowing us to put a link to our jury summons questionnaire on a jury summons. That alone will save us $250,000 in postage. Allowing us to hire a realtor to do our leases, and
You did a great job. I want to thank State Representative Tony Rose.
Yes.
She was miraculous. She took, even on the floor, she took our calls and she navigated. She almost single-handedly was responsible, and Janie Metzinger, I want to thank you as well. But Representative Rose carried that on her back.
Yes.
And that's the reason we got that funding. So,
in fact, it started out as a rider in the budget and was put in the wish list in Article 11 and ended up becoming part of the funding formula instead, which is just an incredible feat, to say the least. Other members of the legislature we need to thank are Senators West, Huffines, and Hall. All 3 of them helped shepherd bills for us through the Senate. On the House side, Representatives Alonzo, Anchia, Coop, Rose, Representative Davis, Representative Giddings. just pretty much our entire House delegation. But those are the ones that carried bills for us, helped us shepherd them through the process. And internally at Dallas County, I want to thank Erica Terrazas. She's instrumental in helping me read the 6,500 bills that were filed and get a analysis on how it will impact Dallas County. And also Karen from our office for helping keep us on task. She's really good at that.
Other than our civil service reform bill, what other priorities of Dallas County didn't pass?
So we had another bill or another proposal that would have allowed us to get people out of or keep people out of jail if they were on house arrest. So if you were on house arrest for 30 days as part of your bond, or as part of bonding out of jail, and then you were subsequently convicted and sentenced to 60 days, we could shave 30 days off of your 60 days because you're on house arrest. That made it out of the House, but it just died in the Senate due to lack of time. We had two from our medical examiner's office that would have just codified best practices. And we had another one, the one that you already mentioned, which is our civil service reform.
One vote.
Died by one vote on the last day that a vote could be taken in the House.
And how did the delegation from Dallas vote on that, by the way?
Every Dallas County, every member of the Dallas County delegation voted for it, I believe, except for one. And I would rather not call that member out.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm sure. We can figure out who the one is.
Well, and it gets down to the styling of the bill.
Yes.
And that's
yes, it
doesn't
made
necessarily
it
reflect how the bill reads. It's how you describe it.
Correct.
So.
Well, thank you very much for the sleepless nights that you had, I know, over the long session in at least salvaging what could be salvaged out of a very tough time it appeared to be from looking from the outside.
Yes.
I guess
all things considered, Dallas County actually had a really good session, especially considering the local government climate in the state capitol right now.
what do you look forward to in the special session?
We have 4 items that are of interest to us in the special session. One is an attempt to bring revenue caps back up. Those will be in the forefront. It's one of the main issues for the lieutenant governor is lowering our rollback rate and putting a mandatory election on it. The Speaker of the House, the House passed a property tax reform bill and sent it back to the Senate, but it did not include that, which is why it's now on special session call.
I was told yesterday, and I don't know how much of this is accurate, that the position of the Speaker of the House at this point is there will be no property tax reform or appraisal caps or revenue caps without significant revamping and money into public education.
Right.
Is that the current status of the special session?
Yes, the main driver of property taxes is school finance. Yeah, it's funny. The state budget this biennium counts on 14% property tax growth. And so while we may absorb 3 to 5% on average over a long period, probably closer to 3%. The state's counting on 14% over the next 2 years. And that's absolutely due to less funding from the state using sales tax and other means and relying on the property tax collections of ISDs.
So given that this, maybe ask you a little bit to look into a crystal ball, but given that the Speaker has said the House won't consider appraisal and revenue caps unless there is a will to put more funding and redo the formula into education, does the Speaker in a special session have the ability to stop that from happening in the House and or revenue and appraisal caps effectively dead for this special session?
We don't know.
I don't want to speak for the Speaker, but he did it during regular session, so we'll see what happens in the in a special session. You know, there's one other item that's even more damaging to us than revenue caps, in my opinion, and that is a cap on spending that's linked to population plus inflation. It's similar cap as what the state has, which is why property taxes have increased so much, because the state can't spend, so they push the services down to cities and counties.
Yeah,
And you know, that'll be the one that I think gets the most traction, because there's precedent for it at the state level.
And has the Speaker and the House leadership taken a position on that one yet?
Not that I'm aware of. Sometimes I wish we were Bexar County so that we'd have a little better access to the Speaker, since that's where he's from, but he hasn't said anything publicly that I know of about that special call.
Well, we will see, and in the meantime, well, thank you, Mr. Reed, for all your work.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good job. Okay, now budget.
The best part for me.
Yeah, all this other stuff means.
Good morning, Judge and Commissioners. I'll try to be brief.
You are usually brief.
This is the first FY18 budget update. In February, I did an FY17 budget update using data that was from December and January. This is the Table 1 that has been debated and discussed in the media much earlier than I was ready to have it discussed in the media. Luckily, it didn't have to change much other than from where it was. What you have is, we'll walk through this real quick, is the beginning balance budgeted and projected that it would be $66 million. When I did the presentation in February, it was at $68 million. However, that was using a beginning balance that hadn't been finalized by the auditor's office. They then, for a variety of different reasons, had to accrue $4 additional million for liability purposes. So the final number became $64 million. So it's about $2 million less, $2.5 million less than what I projected.
Let's stop for a second on that. So my understanding is the outside auditor came in and said there's $4 million more that need to come out of this. So are there mechanisms and best practices, and this is for either the auditor or Ryan, are there mechanisms and best practices that can be put into place so that next year we're closer to the right number?
No. Really, the issue here is that I did a presentation with a number in February that wasn't a final number because they hadn't finalized it. The entire process of the outside auditor coming through here is reviewing the books and making these types of recommendations to ensure that they can then certify the CAFR as meeting all of the GASB things.
In a perfect world, our outside auditor would find the same things that our internal auditor is finding. So what best practices, if any, could we put into place so we get closer to that number? Do we know why we were off? I'm sure we know why we're off, so what could we do?
Can you get the microphone?
It's just an estimate number. The beginning balance that I came up with, the $66 million, was just an estimate. The fact that they gave me a $68 million was just because that's where they thought it was going to be. And then ultimately, the outside auditor said, due to liability accounts, you need to move an additional $4 million over, and they moved it. Had this been the first presentation in court, you would have just seen the $64 million and moved on.
But wait a minute, there was a miscalculation in this.
That's a different one. That was an estimate that wasn't correct, and that's on property taxes.
Yeah, before we get to that miscalculation, which was formula-based, there's this $4 million discrepancy, and not to be critical of anyone because, numbers shift and there are estimates and whatnot. Are there best practices or things that we can put into place so our numbers are closer next year, our estimates?
Even the year before that, when first Deloitte came, they changed their practice. So as big as we are, we had a reasonable estimation for accruals because some of the things don't come from the department timely. The system was not allowing us. But last year, after discussing with them when they first came, we put internal control in place with the cooperation of, in particular, facilities and public works. We did a good work, good internal control. When they come this year, they found less, but to put internal control in place takes time, but the system is working. They didn't put this as a finding. So this year, since we found that one, we they want us to accrue all the way till month of March. We didn't do that in the past. We used to cut it at a given point prior. But now they want all the way to accrue as you go, collect it from the department. So we put a control in place, and that's why you see that number is going high.
So next year, it'll probably be closer.
Yes.
Great.
Their number won't change as much. That's the difference. I mean, because ultimately, I'm the one who came up with the $66 million, and they came up with 64. So I mean, those are just based on expenditures, revenues, and accruals, and the accounting that goes into place. The next one is a projection on revenues. While the overall revenues are down about $3 million, there was a $5.5 million decrease in property tax values in the general fund, and that was where there was a miscalculation in the estimation about what the property tax would be. It has to do with the fact that when they get information from DCAD, the information says this is the market value, and then you subtract out homesteads, you subtract out over 65s, you subtract out TIFs, and you subtract out capped values on residential. And the calculation didn't properly subtract out the capped values. Capped values went from $6 billion the prior year to $14 billion. So it was a very huge increase, and I think that just caught the calculation didn't catch it. They have put in place the controls and the mechanisms to ensure that they have a better estimation in the future as it relates to capped values.
And freezes, it costs us how much?
Wow, I had even looked that one up, but it's fairly large at this point in time, and it will only continue to grow as the over 65 population continues to grow.
And that miscalculation is we use the 2015 numbers and
They increased the 2015 cap value in their estimation. They just didn't increase it enough. I don't think anybody expected that it was going to double. For the current year that we're looking at, the cap value is about $7 billion, so it's back down to a more historical value.
Well,
is that something that can be predicted?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
And so then, but you've
you know,
already got
error
those
was-
measures in place to
Right.
be able to
Right.
predict it as accurately as you can on
I'm confident that
based
the auditor's
information.
office won't make that error again. And I'm not casting a stone, because I can guarantee you I've made multi-million-dollar errors in the budgeting side too, where I forget to put something in or we miscode something wrong, and it just happens.
And nobody's casting stones. As Ryan pointed out in the newspaper yesterday, had we had the information we now have, perhaps the budget would have been handled differently last year.
Correct.
So
I'm sure we would have made different decisions.
And that is the point. You know, when a miscalculation happens, and with all respect to everybody, it changed, the way this body made a decision. A miscalculation when you represent 2.1 million people is a big mistake.
Well.
Yes, it is. And clearly decisions were made.
We would have handled a whole budget, a whole year budget in a different manner.
Decisions were made based on a faulty estimation. But
but
in theory, think of it this way. The $66 million that I said was going to be the beginning balance was an estimation, and I was wrong. I was wrong by $2 million.
And Mr. Brown,
So,
we all make mistakes.
Yeah,
I understand.
Right.
My point here is these kind of miscalculations affect the way a budget for the whole county is taken.
They
and done.
absolutely do.
With that being said, have we taken the steps, Mr. Auditor, because this happened under your watch, for this not to happen again?
Okay. The main factor on this one, which we found out, is the loss due to the freeze. We have been following that number, but it was not affecting materially in the past 5 years. So with this situation now, with the current situation, and the other is the information to get it, it comes late after October.
Exactly.
So we are trying our best now. We already started how to get that information ahead of time and see if we can put on the driving factors of this particular line item so that we will not have estimation error or underestimation of loss in the freeze in the future. So we have something in place. Actually, we immediately applied it to our FY18.
You're doing monthly. Doing monthly accruals.
And that will prevent that miscalculation. We're getting prepared more in advance, and it will be reviewed by more people.
Yes, we do the same thing, but Commissioner, what I want you to remember is this is really a moving target. Yeah. We always try to do our best estimate. Revenue forecasting is not something which we can take from a book. There are so many subjective realities that you have to consider. Right. But so far, we believe this is 1.7 away from what we generally estimate, 1.7%, if you take it high level. So to estimate a revenue with a 1.7 error, although we wanted it below 1, we are not saying it is a small amount, but it is, of course, it is a revenue estimation error, but I cannot guarantee you, it will be. But yes, we consider this. We are placing internal control in place. Actually, our review mechanism is good. This is now the revenue revising the estimation. That's what it is. So we have to consider this dynamic number from 2 million, 2 million, 2 million, 3 million to 7 million. It just jumped. So we are trying to see what is driving it. So I think
we know what's driving it. It's unprecedented increases in homestead property or in residential property values. Last year they went up 11.74% according to the appraisal district. That means that the average homeowner had a cap of 1.74 because they can only go up 10%. But some homeowners, their appraisal may have gone up 20%. So 10% of that value was capped off. We have to do these calculations differently in this time when this year the preliminaries are 12% for residentials. Last year the actuals were 11.74 because property tax burden went up 7.5%, whatever it was, 2 years ago, 5.8% 3 years ago. So when it's going up 5%, you're going to have less that go over 10, obviously. When it's going up 12, you're going to have a lot more.
I appreciate that diatribe, but that's not the case. That's not the way he calculated and he wound up, with the issue in terms of projection.
What he said is that they relied on what had happened in the past. But we have to look at the property value raises.
No.
Because there's a cap at 10%. You're not going to see very many when property taxes go up 3 or 5%, as they historically have. But when they're going up 12%, you're going to see quite a few.
It's not only one factor that will affect it. There are the age factor, other situations. Had it been only one or two data to follow up, that would be easy. But this is an estimation of a number that you cannot easily predict, but we hope.
Right. And there's thousands of these lines that they're estimating.
Exactly.
And the theory that an estimate is wrong and therefore it's an error means that in parking, because it was 700,000 more than they projected, that means that was an error too, correct?
Right.
So it's hard to call it really an error when it is you're estimating something and sometimes you're going to miss growths, you're going to miss different things.
I don't think anybody's calling it an error. I think we've been using the word miscalculation, but it's something that we need to avoid in the future because obviously, as Dr. Garcia said, had we had accurate information last year, I didn't vote for the budget, but those who did, would have perhaps voted, differently.
But even if you look at what we did last year, the only thing that has done and that has changed is that if you try to do what you did last year, you can't even balance your budget going forward this year. So, so we're a couple of $1 million off of where we'd be.
Right. So
that's not even one. I know.
We'll see.
I'm sorry.
We'll work together.
The point is that we take that information, you take the best information you have at any one point and go from there. There's going to be additional information we'll get in July also, which will bring us even closer to what is actually amount of dollars available, right?
Doesn't happen.
And that's absolutely correct. We always use the best information we have to do these type of things.
And Dr. Garcia and I are not saying that anyone, is doing a bad job or is anything but a hardworking public servant. We're just looking for what internal controls are we going to put in place so that we don't have this happen this year and next year.
In the auditor's office is certainly
The
put
rest of
those.
us are? Well, of course, we're looking for the best ways that we can
Yeah, I'm not
figure out what our dollars available are.
If anything I've said indicates that you're not hardworking, I certainly, or anyone isn't hardworking. That's not what I intended. I want us to all work together to solve the problem.
The last one that I do think wanted to point a key at, that it's very important because it is something that is starting to trend in the right direction, and that is the interest on investments. We are looking at $12 million for the current year, and then $1.2 million for the current year and $1.5 million for 2018. I can remember the days when that number was $22 million. Right, and so it is good to see that that is finally starting to move back. The other revenues are up a little bit, but as I said, overall, the year to year, you're down about $3 million on your revenues coming in. On the expenditure side, your salaries are over the budget. That is something that just is the way it's looking at, though it is trending back down as we've started to see the DSOs that we aren't going to be funding coming October 1 start to attrition out. You do see an increase in overtime. That is not to be surprised, because as you move to the right number of DSOs, you will see a trend in overtime to go up. There is some overtime in some departments that haven't historically expended overtime, and so at some point I will sit down with those departments and try to get a better feel of why it is, and then bring that back to Commissioners Court so that you guys can decide if you want to continue to spend overtime in those areas. Extra help is up as well, though
But the overtime should not traditionally exceed what we have historically plugged for overtime.
Correct. In historically, overtime has almost always been sheriff-related functions, but we are starting to see some overtime be expended in facilities, in the building security area, and areas like that. So we do need to circle back and find out why those areas are expending that, and then bring that to you guys, because that is a decision you get to make, is whether or not you want to take comp time or be paid.
On salaries, you've got $3 million savings there. Is that because of attrition, or what is that?
That's just because there will be some additional attrition. Right now, the truancy positions are filled, but as we go to the closing of the two courts...
They're not actually filled.
The magistrates aren't actually filled, but the staff is. And so as
okay.
if those get moved into other spots, that savings will fold in there as we finalize what the juvenile department is going to be doing as it relates to their type of staffing through the budget retreat that we're going to have.
Okay.
We'll get a little more detail in as I get into some of the other pages.
Well, at the end of the day, this whole thing about we can keep talking about attrition and all. You've got less than 4 months. If the people are not in there, you got to take those positions out of the budget. I mean, it's just that you can talk about attrition all you want to. We've been talking attrition for over a year. Mm-hmm. And there's been basically no movement.
And that ultimately will end up being a decision Commissioners Court gets to make, is whether or not you want to continue to do any of the staff adjustments through attrition, or if we're going to actually have layoffs for the first time in 5-6 years.
Well, we've been saying that, though.
I know.
And reduction in force is not a bad word. When in fact, what are they doing? The work product has gone away.
It's not completely gone away. So
well,
yes,
for the most part,
but yes,
there's no way you would
not.
No way you would staff based on the number of people that you keep talking about attrition. You wouldn't staff that way.
Correct.
Okay. And again, that's when we look at this juvenile budget. Again, what does the Texas Administrative Code say about positions in probation? And if we did that same formula in the Sheriff's Department, it would cost us $30 million more dollars. The standard says 1 to 48.
Right.
Let's say, that's the minimum standard under the Texas Commission on Jail Standard. So let's do 2 to 48. Let's do 3 to 48. Texas Administrative Code says 1 to 100.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Based on that, that's 15.
Correct.
Okay. And we have 104.
That is
and even if you didn't deal with it, I don't care. You get the numbers. If you do four times that, which moves it from 1 to 100 to 1 to 25, you do the numbers, you're still 40 over.
Right.
That is correct, and that is why the juvenile department has been tasked with going through and saying, my juvenile probation officers are in field offices, and here's that ratio. And the board will get that information. Here's the juvenile probation officers that are working on specialty programs, and you'll be able to get that information. And ultimately, the commissioner's court or the juvenile board will also get the information related to the success measures of those programs, and we'll be able to say, yes, we want to continue to fund that many probation officers or not.
So with what Commissioner Price is saying, and I agree, when I perceive he's saying more broadly, and he's talking about one department, but what I think he's saying more broadly is our departments need to look at have innovations or changes in the way business is done or populations that you're dealing with. Has that changed in some way so that you're not at the right size? And so there's two of us, and Commissioner Cantrell, where are you on that?
Well, populations are compressing.
So, are we in alignment with the Commissioners Court that we want the departments to look at right sizing?
Well, but that's what we're supposed to do.
Okay. Do we want recommendations from the departments who know their work best before we do those things?
If they knew, my mom would say they knew better than to do that.
They're not right sizing?
You know, see, I mean, if they...
So, do we want to do that without the information? Do we want to just do that on our own, or do we want to have...
Well, if you wait
the departments...
in his presentation, you'll get to 3 more pages, and he goes down and kind of goes through those departments.
And let's be
But
careful.
I think a lot of those departments haven't really met on that yet. I know, I don't want to call anybody out, but I don't know how I can say this without... So I won't... Well, I know for a fact some of the departments hadn't looked at that yet. So is there a way we can get the departments...
You guys are giving blind directions, so that
And that's what I'm trying to do.
And guys,
It sounds like there's two of us that are trying to give you that
that's
direction.
our job, and it's outlined. It's outlined in the next
That's
pages.
right. Why
But
don't
I
we
just
listen
want
to
to
what he has to
caution. I
say?
just want to caution all of us. Okay, before we get there, we have seen the results of cutting too much, and then when they come up with the complaints and the concerns and through the cracks, we say, well. We've been telling you to cut, and
It's
you're at
called
the
management.
I understand,
It has
Commissioner.
nothing to do with
and trust me,
cuts.
I know
It's
management.
called management.
I know management.
Well, I
and
know
I'm
you're
just
thinking of management. I
I'm
just
cautioning the court
and I'm cautioning the court is that we've been sitting around.
about doing it, right at this.
Mr. Brown, what's your
Well,
perceive with
we
your
need to do
presentation?
it. Now is the time to do it.
Well, and he's about to explain it. If we wait for the
Can we let
explanation.
Mr. Brown proceed with his presentation?
Yes, I agree.
And maybe some of
Let me
these
get through
questions-
this slide very quickly, and then we can move on to the fun stuff, I guess. Health insurance listed on the slide is up 1.4 million. It's actually 2.4 over the original budget, but there's 1 million this year, and it's a 1.4 next year. Then really the big drop is in the capital side. What's pulled out of there is that this year we funded about $2 million worth of audiovisual upgrades in the criminal courts. Part of that's that number. Plus, we did about $2.5 million of vehicle purchases when historically we've been closer to $1 million because we wanted to catch up on our vehicle replacements. Staying with what Commissioner Garcia was talking about, my understanding is that they are looking at our vehicles, and I believe that the department who oversees that would like to talk about changing the replacement schedule so that we'd be purchasing more vehicles than we normally historically would. So, I mean, those are the types of things that at some point we have to balance resources to desires and needs. And so, but that's a good discussion to have, and I look forward to discussing that with the individuals involved on that. Needless to say, where we stand today at the effective tax rate, which gets you the $9.6 million in additional property values that you can see on the difference thing, is that we're about $9.1 million short of a balanced budget.
And no balanced budget, that's what I said.
Short of a balanced budget.
Now, okay, so this 9 million
Yep.
Negative,
Correct.
you're saying you've already added in the 9 million for new construction?
Correct.
So that's straight across the board.
So if Commissioners Court said they wanted the budget to be balanced at the effective tax rate, given the current projections, and obviously these projections will move between now and September when we finalize everything, you would need to eliminate $9.1 million worth of expenditures, which is primarily going to be positions.
Does that take into account the hit that we're taking or on LIRAP that we just talked about with the state?
The LIRAP is actually funded through a grant from the state, so it is not a general fund expenditure, and you don't see it in the general fund or even in the other funds. It's a grant expenditure.
If we chose, I'm not saying we would choose, but if we chose to take over that that program, then we would see an additional what?
You'd have to come up with about $1 million to fund that program if you chose to continue to do it.
How much?
About $1 million a year.
Oh,
it's more than that.
It's more than that.
It's got to be more than that,
Yeah, it's
Ryan.
more than that.
5.5.
Let me refer. I'm referring to the Clean Air Task Force as $1 million. If you wanted to take over the LIRAP, that's about $17 million.
Okay, yeah, that's what she said. LIRAP. That's what
I apologize.
said. Okay.
I always forget that the vehicle replacement program is
But
the big
LIRAP
number.
this year with this veto will be zero from the state, right?
Going into starting August 31st, the COG will have some leftover funding because they hadn't been expending all the funds that they've been receiving on the LIRAP side. So I don't know what their plan is on how long they plan on continuing.
Is anybody from COG here? I didn't know if Natalie might come, but we're not talking about taking over LIRAP.
No.
That was the question I just heard.
I know, but we're not. I'm not. I'm not in favor
I
of
can't.
that.
I
Okay,
can't
just
imagine
wanted to
you
get
guys
that
would be
out.
interested.
Well, and that's the reason when he
Okay.
said he said LIRAP, he said million.
No, I
I said,
understand,
hey,
but we're not-
that's not right.
Now, and you've answered my next question about sheriff traffic, clean air. That's $1 million, but that's not baked in here. If we took over that, this number would be $10 million.
Yes, if you wanted to do Clean Air Task Force, you would have to come up with $1 million.
But are you calculating the city of Dallas is?
That's traffic. That's different.
Yeah.
Just Clean Air Task Force is $1 million.
Okay.
And then, as you see further in the slide, the net delta on sheriff traffic between revenues coming in and expenditures going out, pulling out the COG contribution, which they're no longer going to do, pulling out, assuming the city of Dallas isn't going to give us our $600,000 either for that, then it's a $5.5 million number.
Or if the city does, it's a $4.9 million. Okay.
Correct. My position on that one is that the city of Dallas is in no shape to pick up that workload at this point in time. Plus, the sheriff's office really does a good job of keeping the downtown corridor open for traffic. They don't, do the old city of Dallas way, which was you put a fire truck and you close 4 lanes because you have a fender bender on the side of the street. So I would recommend that we maintain the sheriff traffic at least at this time and see what we can do with as it relates.
And I agree with you 100% on that. I mean, it's proven for since 2007 when we started.
So that would
But that'll be part of the budget that we'll be talking about.
That is clearly, but it is a decision because right now you do have some very nervous individuals in the sheriff's office. I would like to see them release some of the trainees that they've kept in the traffic program and return them to bailiffs because that's part of the extra help and overtime that you're seeing. Is that related to the bailiff? What they did was they kept them in the traffic to write the tickets. We are clearly seeing an increase in the number of tickets and therefore JP revenues are up a bit, but it's not, you're never going to get enough ticket revenue to justify the cost of the individual.
Right.
So I would like to recommend that we suggest to the sheriff's office that we are going to keep the traffic program at this point in time unless something else happens and we can't afford it. But in that way they can return the bailiffs. Yeah.
Well, I'm in favor of the traffic program.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to make cuts somewhere else
That's
to be able
right.
to keep it.
I understand.
Okay. All right.
Understand?
Oh.
Do
'Cause
recall?
now you're up to 14 million.
Well, but let's also state that remember this is an effective tax rate. If you maintain the current tax rate, you can add $15.7 million to that bottom line.
You're with 15 though. Still, even if you do
15 means you won't be looking at giving pay raises.
And no
so
pay
you will
raises,
still
that's right.
have to fold through some of the staff adjustments that are necessary to be able to get the pay raises.
Well, I'm just saying, if you keep the raw rate, you keep the sheriff's patrol traffic, and you stay with this $9 million, you're there.
You barely meet your budget.
You're there already. You're there with the raw rate.
This number assumes traffic is already in there.
Okay.
In other words, I didn't back it out.
Okay.
This number right here at $9 million assumes that traffic is paid for, and that this COG money is gone. That's it's rolled into that other number up there.
So this is a full 5.5.
This already assumes traffic is maintained.
No, not 5.5, 4.9, because 600,000 is the city, and the city said they're gone.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, so.
Yeah.
So it's $5 million.
Until I hear from the city that they're not going to pay, it's
We
in there.
stayed at the raw rate.
Ultimately.
The raw rate gets us 15 million.
Correct.
That's right. But again, even with 15 million, it's the difference between 9 million. It's only 6 million, which is basically,
$6 million gets you 2% pay raise.
2%. That's 2%.
Well, and that might be the most you can do.
And it might be. And as I said, if you stay at the raw rate, you will be able to balance a budget. You will be able to do a little bit of a pay raise. What you won't have, which is really at the end of the slides, is you won't have money to move towards the buildings and IT, which are two funds that we are currently expending more funds than we've been allocating for them. We've been able to do that by borrowing against transportation projects, but we know at some point in time, probably once the city of Dallas does their big bond program, they're going to start doing a lot of transportation programs, so they're going to start coming to their partner, us, and asking for those funds. So we're going to need to be able to make sure that we have funds available, because at no point do we ever want to say we can't be the partner any longer on a transportation project because we've run out of funding.
Yeah, we've made those commitments.
Which is why I've always been talking with you about doing what I call a skip year for transportation funding in 2020. I don't think you guys want to do two skip years, 2020 and 2021.
Nope.
At this point, I don't think you have to, but at some point, if we continue to expend more than we're allocating to to IT and buildings, that is a possibility.
Brian, can I interject on that?
Okay, Ms. Alberta Blair.
Oh, yeah. Right now, we're actually starting doing our mobility plan study right now, and we're meeting with the cities next week. We're looking at 2018 to start talking about the 7 call. And the cities are really coming to us right now discussing plans for the 7 call. So, we've already told them that we were skipping that 2021 year, but at the same time, they are really interjecting on projects that we're really trying to start and planning for the years of from 2022 to 2026.
Well, we've already, we originally told them we'd have somewhere close to 100 million a year.
Yes.
When you take out for buildings and parks and trails.
That was before we did records.
Well, that's what I was fixing to say. So now, we've incurred an additional $200 million. So that puts us out how long? 20, 30?
30-something.
32, 35?
Yeah.
So it really reduces the amount.
It reduces the amount by about 13 to 15 million a year, which is the debt service.
If you start trying to delay more projects and reducing money, then you kind of get shaky. So we made a commitment to the cities, and we ought to hold to that commitment.
I agree.
So we really need to go through and look at the departments, and I'm waiting for you to get to that page. So,
okay.
All right.
Can I go to the next slide?
Yeah, that is.
I think we're ready.
Keep going.
Given the shortfall that we're talking about, even at, and then in the dialogue that we've had, I do believe that you're in agreement that we shouldn't be looking at adding additional positions unless it's self-liquidating, mandated, or fundamentally critical to the missions of what we're doing. I do want to make an exception that obviously the pretrial release program, as we modify and change that, is going to have additional positions. There will be additional expenditures there, but you also can make the assumption there will be some additional savings on the court-appointed attorney line item, because as people are better determined what their financial resources are, they should have fewer court-appointed attorneys. In addition, as that it decreases our jail population because more people will be released on bonds, we will also have a decrease in the number of jailers that we'll need, because we'll be able to fold in some additional population change there. Lastly, that will also impact the sheriff will be the fact that these are trustees that will no longer be in jail. And so we do need to acknowledge there are certain functions that the sheriff does that we'll probably have to hire staff to do to be able to continue to maintain a clean and safe environment for the inmates. We will also have to make...
Not just in case for inmates, compliance.
Compliance. Plus, we'll need to make sure that We may have to make some adjustments and increase the risk level of some of the trustees that we utilize in certain functions like the kitchens and whatnot, which may require us to have an additional staff to supervise those higher level inmates.
I thought the commission regulated who we could denote for trustee status.
If there's a level, we haven't reached it because we've been increasing the risk level as.
But it was. Right. Yeah. Well, I just remember it coming up.
Yes, sir. There is a standard that we have to set.
Exactly.
But we would have to ask that we would be given
Well,
an exception.
well, if I recall, we were doing some, and they basically said, "Hey, you need to call and ask for a variance for what we were even doing." So now, based on what Ryan's presentation is, we're talking about kind of upping that request.
We can ignore the fact that we don't have any more.
No, I got it. I got it.
Commissioner, have you, on the community service program, have you looked at using those people for cook chill?
I don't think, the problem is the community service program has basically gone to about, on average, about 35 a day.
Okay, but if you're trying to move more people out because you don't want them in jail serving fines, not paying fines or cost, then they have to be able to do community service somewhere.
Well, I mean, no, I can still. I'm utilizing. The problem is, I probably couldn't
Doesn't
clear
have enough to do what they already
I couldn't
currently
clear
do.
them to get them in. Yeah, I couldn't make them clear to get in to do cook chill.
Yeah,
couldn't clear them because of the records. We've got criminals in there doing it now.
No.
Yeah.
But you got a certain level. So when you get the community service.
Well,
then
most
they
of
go
the
with
people
your
are doing
background.
community service are misdemeanors.
Yeah. We could look at it, but there is that commingling of an inmate with a non-inmate. That's, I think, going to be an issue.
I think they're just barely keeping up with the workload.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, that 35.
They're not assessing the
Yeah.
fines. I mean,
we on average, and we're watching, and like you said, we're barely keeping up with the work we got now.
But in all this discussion that you've had, we are absolutely positively in compliance with what the commission has directed for jail security and all
we're
this.
compliant.
I don't want there to be any kind of
Right, we're compliant.
misinterpretation
No.
of what this discussion has.
We're
has
not.
been.
It was just,
Know
I
that,
don't know if
know
it was the
that.
last inspection or the inspection before, they just told us we had some issues, and of course, we adjusted. But as Ryan said, as we talk about going forward, the sheriff said, we got to ask for a variance, and they didn't, the last time they kind of pulled a coattail for it. So it's just going to be challenging. This whole dynamic, and I hate to keep saying stuff, this whole debtor prison thing is going to change a lot of dynamics. The sheriff serves about 9.3 million meals a year, and when you look at that they cook it, they chill it, they clean up, they do the laundry. I mean, when you look at that, I think one year we put a minimum what do we call that, the wage, minimum wage on it, and we came up with millions of dollars.
It is millions of dollars. And there still will be some trustees that will be able to be utilized, but it will impact our numbers, and it just has to. Yeah. Otherwise, we're not doing what we're saying we're doing well. Right. I won't even go into the new position requests at this point in time because I don't think there's going to be much there.
No.
Okay. This slide is the one that really where the rubber meets the road, because these are very obvious workload changes. The criminal case filings are down, so we really do need to take a look at what is the proper staffing for the county and the district clerks, along with collection staffing in the clerk's offices, as well as the district attorney's office. There clearly is going to be some dialogue that with video evidence that there's additional work on the attorneys than there was before, but is it 40%? More work? Because that's in theory what this would say. If your filings are down 40%, then you're that. So there needs to be a dialogue as it relates to that. as well as the e-filing in the civil and criminal courts. Obviously, that changes the way those cases were coming in the past. So what does that staffing need to look like? How should it change?
Because there may be an impact on in other areas.
That
too,
isn't to
right?
say that they're, it's just that customer facing, picking up the civil case filing has gone down. There's also means somebody in the back is accepting an electronic file and having to process it. So they still have to process it. It's just done differently. And so is it more efficient to process it electronically than it is with the customer? And do we have too many people sitting there waiting for customers?
Yeah, but this is the old typewriter versus computer. You know, those of us been around here long enough to say
In our paperless society, we're doing fine, right?
Bringing up that one.
Never been able to reduce staff.
We never reduce staff.
Never ever.
There used to be a commissioner that would sit up there and say, I'm not going to grant a computer until they could show me the positions that go away. And he remembers exactly who that one was.
I bought it up.
Jail population, obviously, we're already making adjustments in there, so we'll have to continue to do the adjustments that we've already briefed in February, plus some additional adjustments. Recently, there's been a slight up intake of inmates, and so that's caused the sheriff to open up a couple pods and floors. So I will have to come back with a briefing that it actually adds a few DSOs back in, but there's some other areas that I'm taking a look at that we'll take a look at. The juvenile detention population, we know that that's been down. We talked about it in February as well, so those changes will be folded through. Plus, as we do the juvenile retreat, I anticipate some additional dialogue on what's the proper staffing of the juvenile department. Truancy court filings, in February, there was agreement that we would shut down the 2 courts, and so we'll have to continue to move forward with making that happen. Constable and Justice of Peace staffing will be adjusted based on the workload standards that we've used for a long time. Hot check filings, we need to go back and figure out what the DA is using at the hot check staff that is no longer processing hot checks. As those hot checks have gone down, they have detached that staff to do things elsewhere in the office. So we'll have to have a discussion of, is that elsewhere stuff you want done or not? And then civil filing decrease. So we do need to take a look.
If the funds gone down, the filings have gone down. The funds have
Well,
gone.
interesting enough, the funds have gone down quite a bit, but they've never funded that function themselves with those funds. We've always funded those out of the general fund, and then they took hot check funds and used them to expend elsewhere. Those funds are down to virtually nothing. The workload is there's very few checks that are coming in because there's very few merchants that accept an over the check. So we just need to take a look. Where did the staff go, and at least let you know where it went.
Ron, that's.
Yes, I know where you're going. Okay. You know, and that's why you've heard me say it before, and I'll say it again. We're real good at identifying when new workload hits a department, and they come in and say, "I need more staff," and we can show, "Yep, there's new workload. They need more staff." We present it to you. You guys grant it. We do a poor job of identifying when workload goes down because there's very few departments that will come to my office and say, "Ryan, you know, I have less to do today than I used to. I want you to get rid of these staff."
I have.
Yeah. I said very few. I didn't say none for that particular reason.
Reorganize when I don't need a system, move them out. My people, you know, and we've had this conversation, you know, and that's the reason. I think, you know, now is the time for us to really deal with this budget. If we're going to ever deal with it, we've got to, you know, we've got to deal with it now. And I don't care what you put them, you know, car allowances. I think you know, it's interesting because I think what I really want to say on the car allowance stuff, I think we all should have to turn in mileage.
A mileage.
Take it all, make everybody turn in mileage, so we'll know where folks driving and where they're going. Put it in.
And we need to take a look at who has a take-home vehicle, and does that make sense?
Same thing. Now is the time. You know, we already said we can't balance our budget with effective rate. We get basically just a couple of million over if we go with the raw rate, which was the arm wrestling last year. So we stay with the raw rate, and we're still, what, $6 million? That's it. So now is the time.
To analyze what we can cut.
We take the best numbers that we
Not
have at
analyze.
any moment and move forward with that, right?
And see how much it can be cut without
Well,
affecting
yeah,
services.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point of analyzing,
No, we don't
looking
want
into
to
anything.
impact services, but see, the thing is, you
Exactly.
can't keep, what he just said, your population and all can't keep decreasing, and if you got standards, where are the people going?
Well, then another part of this is too, where the money's going that are on one-time expenditures and those that continue. When you repair a building, there isn't one-time expense on that. When you hire staff and give them a raise, that is a continual expense.
But capital
So we
versus
have to be,
operate,
you
yeah,
know,
but capital
be
versus
careful on how we're doing that.
yeah,
And I think that we can handle that.
Yeah, but capital doesn't concern me. As you said, we continue to talk about delayed capital. We got some challenges capital-wise. I just hit Mr. Bazan. You just gave me. I've been requesting the building needs for FY18 and what is replacement, what's necessary. We're gonna have to make some hard decisions.
We have to prioritize as we have in the past, right?
And that's exactly what we mean. I think that the list that Mr. Brown is presented today is a very good list. We have to start somewhere. With that being said, I hate to see Ms. Alberta Blair on a $40 million deficit, or some of those issues that will affect, our commitment to other cities. Or Mr. Bazan, we're doing so good, finally reducing deferred maintenance, that I will hate to lose some of that pool.
Well, and no reflection on Mr. Bazan, but on Ms. Alberta, when you look at what Dallas County has traditionally done, we've taken in that department $600 million and leveraged $1.3 billion.
No, I agree, Commissioner.
That's a whole different work
I'm
model.
not minimizing anybody. My point all along has been the same. We need to look and analyze in what are the cuts that will be most convenient for Dallas County without affecting or cutting services or the future, period. And that's my point.
One thing I noticed on this list, and I agree, it's a great starting place, but there are departments that aren't included on the list. Are we asking all departments to come to you with cuts or proposed right sizing?
That is a decision of the Commissioner's Court.
It would be my desire that happen. Or is there other desire that happen?
I'm good with that.
Well, why don't we take a look? Have you finished your presentation yet?
Well,
It's
no.
got one more page of Clean Air Task Force.
I think we've touched most of these, but Clean Air Task Force, we just need to move forward.
There is at least a majority for all departments to work with you on those.
They will.
I will draft something up that we can get before the Commissioner's Court on a 5-signature letter as it relates to that. Clean Air Task Force, we kind of already touched on that. I think your determination was you're going to remove the $6 fee, and then we'll figure that out. But we still need to deal with the lease, and we'll need to deal with forfeiture funds. So the civil division will need to take a look.
Is there more study needed by anyone, or is there a majority to get rid of the $6 that the state keeps stealing?
I think ultimately it will have to be a court order to do so. But yeah, I think that seems to be the direction.
So does your staff have enough direction to get a court order on for 2 weeks from now to get the taxpayers back their $6 the state's stealing from us?
Well, I don't know. Don't keep saying there's a special session coming up. You're going to cut off your nose,
Let's
bite your
not
face.
get the horse ahead or whatever, the cart ahead of the horse.
don't do that.
Because a budget is a total package. Why don't we
This isn't
take a
money
look
that
at that
we-
total package?
We don't get this money, Commissioner. This is money that our taxpayers are
I understand.
send to Austin that they're keeping.
I understand that, but I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves and taking out this piece and taking out that piece. Let us take a look at the package deal, as Commissioner Price has been saying. Let's take a look at the whole thing. Let's get the best numbers that we can. Let's have the special session go through to see, okay, what do we really have?
Right. I mean,
Let's let the appraisal district give us their best number in July. There's a lot of information that we do not even have on our final number yet.
This LIRAP money is money that should have come back to us. It's money being assessed to our taxpayers.
We got that.
So it's not gonna. There's nothing that's gonna happen in the special session according to the law and our.
As a whole, and see what there is.
And I agree with Commissioner Daniel. We need to look at the regional effects and let's look at what we're doing before we just automatically put
I
a quarter
agree.
on and say, let's just cancel it. Let's look at it.
Through August 31st, so I mean,
That's
we're
right.
in time, but you know, we
Well,
will
I-
explore it, we'll talk with Kyle.
And Josh, not that we don't agree with you or what you're
It's the
saying.
entire deal.
We're just saying.
Because nobody
we
wants
can
our money to
wait.
be taken and not given back to us.
Understand.
Agree.
Okay, and I hear the will of the court, but let's understand that every day our citizens go to register their vehicles and to get inspections, and when they get that one-stop inspection registration, they're getting hit for that $6 that allegedly is going to our community, but in reality is going to balance the state budget.
You know, I appreciate the fact that you always jump out ahead and put the rest of us under the bus.
I'm not trying to put you
for,
on the
for
bus.
not being sympathetic, but I don't think that's very responsible to pull out this piece and pull out that piece without thinking about where we are today. Some of those things are in place at least until the end of the month. You know, but can we just do it with a little bit of thought, please?
I want to work and be respectful and work with everyone. I'm just making a point just like you are. And the point is that there's no chance from what our person in Austin is telling us and from what our state legislatures are telling us that we're going to get this money back in the special session. And so for 2 years, our people will go in to register their cars and that $6 will go somewhere else. So
Nobody's talking about 2 years.
okay,
huh?
well, so what?
No,
I
we're
would
going
just
through
like to
August,
do it
right?
as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I think that's what she's saying. She said, just August 31st.
And I'd like to get you whatever information and maybe COG can help get the information.
We need the impact.
So that everybody can see that.
COG's been working on this and is working really hard because there's a bunch of people that they
That's
have
right.
on their staff that are funded through this function as well.
Exactly.
Because I mean that's
Because,
really
yeah,
you know,
they take off some
we have a
administrative
minimal amount of impact for us compared to what this will be for COG, so I think that we'll need to get with them and figure out what they want, how they want to approach this. But I agree. I don't think any of you want to continue to pay $6 if you're not going to get a benefit.
We all care, and the judge is right on what he's saying. However, we don't want to move, without checking with all the partners and all the pieces continue to move. So I agree with you, Commissioner.
The last piece on this slide was that because of construction costs and other funding issues related to the road and bridges, that I recommend that we use the $9.5 million and $5,500 per mile for road maintained for the funding of the road and bridges. That funding comes from the vehicle registration as is, and that's about $18 million. So this is just a small portion. The remaining of that money goes into transportation-related projects in Fund 190.
Okay, let me just make sure I understand this. You're not increasing the amount of money going in, but you're increasing the amount, you're changing the amount that's going in to go to a district that has more miles. In other words,
the
there's going to
funding,
be less money, there's going to be more money for Commissioner Price, less money for us three.
Well, of the $1 million increase, those that have county roads will see a larger influx of dollars than those that don't. But everybody will see an increase.
Because
Yes.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get to. Everybody will see an increase because you're increasing the amount going into that?
Correct.
From where?
This year was $8.5 million and $8,500.
Okay, but from where? Where are you getting the money to increase?
The money will come from the road and bridge fee, which is about 18 to 19 million.
Okay,
And so what the impact will be is there'll be $1 million less going into 196 for transportation from the road fee.
Okay.
But that then still gets spent by commissioners through the way you choose to spend your money.
Okay. I'm good.
I figured you were, so explained it.
So
We'll make sure I understand it.
So that each of the districts will then get, in order for all of us to do.
Those that are doing grant and aid will have extra money to grant to their
And
cities
that's
for
not
transportation.
saying you do need more money on
Yes.
the appropriate roads.
They can't do maintenance on the roads at the dollars that we have, and that's why we increased it one time, and now it just needs to go again. And we'll see how this does and see if it stabilizes. If not, we'll be looking at increasing it again in a year or two.
Okay.
But again, Mr. Brown, just for the record, this is money that is used for projects.
All transportation related.
And Commissioner Price has obviously more more miles than all of us.
He has less to
here.
give to his cities in benefit to his
Correct.
cities because he's spending it on county roads. While the two that are doing grant and aid will have more money to give to their cities for roads within their districts.
And one of the things we've had to challenge is some of my cities who are better positioned. The difference between doing Class B roads and Class A is how I have to balance that daggone budget. So they can give me all the Class A roads that they want to, but if I don't have some Class B mix,
That's right.
can't make
Still
my
don't
numbers
make it.
work.
Correct.
And so, yeah,
And the other thing that I want the record to be very clear, this is not money that we use for ourselves.
No, it's not
It's
used.
just for,
It's
other-
used for road maintenance and road construction.
Correct. I mean, it's not used for any specific bill. Correct.
There's no increase in
Thank you,
administrative
Mr.
staff. Major Technology Fund, this one is near and dear to Vic's heart, and this kind of capsulizes what he's been talking about for a while in various meetings. For the road or the Major Technology Fund, we put 1.733 cents of the tax rate into it. That generated $33.7 million in tax revenue for 2017. Assuming no adjustment in the rate, it'll generate $36.4 million going for 2018. They began the fiscal year with a $3.6 million, and they owe the Major Capital Fund $12 million. This capsulizes that concept that we're spending more on Major Technology Fund to be able to continue to move forward on our projects than we're able to give to this fund for funding. And so you're borrowing that $12 million, well, you're borrowing it from transportation projects. That is the whole crux of, and when you even go further down here, you see that of the 33.7, 13.1 is spent on SAS, 16.3 is spent on operating expenses, 2.7 is to repay the Major Capital Fund. That left 1.6 million for new projects. You can't do new projects for 1.6 million. And nor has Commissioner's Court said don't do any new projects, but he is struggling trying to maintain a conscious fiscal conservative approach to this fund, plus get done what needs to be done. So I'd hoped that we would be able to add some additional tax revenue to this year, but it does not look like we'll be positioned.
What did we borrow from Major Capital? We've been down this road before. What did we borrow before from Major Capital?
All 40 million.
You mean on the different buildings?
When I talk about borrowing as cash, it does not change the amount of allocation that we tell Alberta that she could tell cities that we have for transportation project, which is the $40 million. This just means that of what she believes she has to be able to obligate to the cities when they're ready, there's not enough cash in that fund to do so.
Can we look at all of our technology programs? I know on today's budget, there is a person who's an outsourced person whose contract is being extended for the 7th time on one of our projects. So on all of our projects, what's on budget, what's off budget, what's on time, what's off time? Can we get an overview of that? And what have we spent total on each of these large projects, and what's left to spend on them? Because one thing I think that we can all see is as we move towards more and more technology, more and more of our money goes into technology, and so I think as we're discussing this, we need a presentation that's for public consumption about what we're spending there and whether we're on time and on budget or not.
Well, there is a presentation that you get every month from the Technology Executive Committee. It's probably not built in an easy to read manner, and it doesn't really do a great job of telling you what's on time. It just kind of tells you what projects they are and what the funding is. But I believe that Vic will be more than glad to pull that type of information together and get that to the Commissioner's Court.
The information is available.
Yeah.
Brian, how much does a half cent on our tax rate generate?
A half cent should generate about $9 million.
Right. When we originally set up the Major Technology Fund, we dedicated a half cent of our tax rate for major technology to spend $9 million on new projects, new development.
Yep.
Okay, so one of the things that you came and asked this court to do is to wrap in all the IT expenses into IT, into the Major Technology Fund. So we agreed to do that, and you said we will make a pledge that we'll never dip below that half cent. That half cent will always be there to be able to put on new technology. So where's my half cent for technology projects?
And so the math is complicated.
Okay, well, I don't do complicated.
Because when I talk about 13.1 million spent on staff, that is all the staff that's in there. And so some of that staff is working on tech share courts, is working on tech share prosecutor, is working on the implementation of new projects. So that would, in a simple sense, have been carved off out of IT and said, this is maintenance staff, which is this piece, and this staff is development.
Okay.
But those same individuals will do maintenance activities one day and development the next day. So rather than give him 6 different accountants that he could then allocate expenditures back and forth to projects in that regard, we've chosen to do a simple version where all the staff is in the same place and is accounted for the same way.
Okay, so
can I tell you today that you still have your $9 million and half a cent? No, I can't. Is it close? Probably.
Well,
is it probably a little short? More than likely.
Well, if we have 1.6 for new development, I'd say that's still pretty good if you've wrapped everything in on existing capital projects.
Yeah, and it does. And going back to the judges, some of these guys that they're bringing on these contracts are one of 2 reasons. One is because they're on the development project, and then when the development is done, they're going to go away. Right. So you don't want to have to put them on as an employee and have to pay unemployment.
Yeah.
Other ones is, as we know, it's difficult to recruit in the IT environment, and certainly difficult to recruit at some of the salaries we pay. And this is a way for us to bring somebody in, decide if they have the skill set necessary to do the job, and then ultimately hope to bring them on as a county employee. But sometimes that just doesn't work, or takes longer than one would expect because of education that's not as easy to certify, and X, Y, and Z reasons that Ermin, I'm sure, would be more than glad to explain in excruciating detail if anyone wanted to know. But that's the reality. And so, but I do believe it's a good exercise for us to make it a little bit easier to read where we are on our projects, and something that's 1 page, and it only has to cover the major ones, and let that be provided to the Commissioners Court.
Okay.
Next slide is the Permanent Improvement Fund. For those of you that have been around well before I was, you recognize that this was one of those that was originally created for physical plant integrity, HVAC, it was roof repairs, it was asbestos abatement, HVAC upgrades, external facade. It has always had 0.18 cents in it, which generates 3.6 million, will generate 3.8 million. Historically, that fund was really managed and maintained by the facilities department. What the facilities department would do every year is they would present a list of all the things that need to be done that fall in this type of maintenance activities, and then literally draw a line and say, here's where the funding ends, these don't get done. As we've desired to move forward and do a better job of maintaining our buildings, I stopped asking facilities to produce that list and told them, bring forward what needs to be done. We'll present it to Commissioners Court. If they say they want to do it, we'll find a way to fund it. And so that's what Jonathan's been doing, and it was started a little bit before he came, and that's the way they've been doing it. That's why you now have a fund that began the year with a negative balance, because we expended more than there was money in there, and it just has a negative balance. It will end this year with a negative balance because we spent all the money that's in there 2 months ago, but we have not stopped any projects. What we've done is we've moved those projects into 195, which is the capital's buildings portion. We're also exceeding what we're spending in that portion. So that is also eating into transportation funding for projects. It's not stopping any transportation projects from occurring, but it does cause us to have that hole that I talked about that we have to fill with that skip year.
Ryan, can I just make a comment in general? It's kind of going back to what Commissioner said. One thing is we've been really monitoring closely, definitely a lot of the district's extra funding that we need for shortfalls because, of course, our transportation projects right now, inflation is really killing us, and we are getting higher prices on bids. So we're really needing to use the allocation. We have a lot of projects that we're bidding right now, and we're seeing really an increase on prices. So we're needing to maximize those funds as much as possible. One thing we are doing here is we have not really updated the court probably in the last couple of years because of sixth call and moving forth on getting sixth call moving. We haven't really updated on our spreadsheet that we always update with our projects. And we are currently going back through and trying to redo the estimates on those projects so we can get a better feel of the spreadsheet on our allocations that we're having for those projects that we're trying to get out between now, which is basically those projects in the sixth call. So really right now, we were looking probably towards September to provide an update on that spreadsheet to say this is what we need. And that's going to really be something that we need to coordinate with Ryan closely, because I feel that especially if 196, our transportation 196 is going to be impacted, we need to make sure that we have funds available for those projects that are coming up.
Well, and that, again, that's back to what, because now we're getting, and especially those of us who are experiencing growth in that southern sector, logistics, and even the southeast sector, cities that basically have had projects on hold, all of a sudden now,
right.
They're ready. I mean, it's Dallas County is the center, epicenter of the United States, and anything that starts at I-30 and swings all the way around, I mean, the cities are coming, and they're coming a lot quicker than we.
East and west side.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true.
And I think there's one point that should be made too, just to emphasize what Ms. Blair is saying too, is that we're talking about long-term projects. Some of the projects you're talking about now were planned 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago. And it takes that long to bring those projects forward, which then does change oftentimes the bottom line on what you pay for staff and for construction
and all, but that's.
But Commissioner Price, I think his point was, Commissioner, even when they've been in the books for a long time, the cost.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that
and then the municipalities are ready, and if we are not. The project is
well, that's what I'm saying. I'm not sure you put a sharp enough point on that. That there has been projects in the pipeline, but there also has been growth and change in just the basic demographics of what we're talking about.
Well, then, but it's the inflation. I understand the design point, but again, between the inflation and now that the cities.
They're ready. They have the money.
Yeah, they're ready because they realize they've done their numbers. Oh, yeah. And they realize.
As a matter of fact, some of them wants to accelerate them. You know, when I go and say it's 2018, 2020, 2022, they go, what? Yeah. I mean, we're ready to do it now. And that is some of the challenges. And then with all the other partners, you know, TxDOT and all the other partners, I mean, what we're starting to see, everybody's ready except us. And that is a challenge, because then we lose some of the funding with all the other municipalities if we don't move forward.
Yeah, but the good thing is we have flexibility to move the years.
Yes, and so they have been doing a great job. Ms. Blair has juggled all the balls.
Yes.
And this program is still better than locking into a bond program where you can't adjust for inflation or anything else. I mean,
amen. You never catch up on the bond.
Yeah, the 2006 bond money is still being spent.
So the last slide was the major capital fund. I'm not going to necessarily read it. It does sound to me like the will of the court is that they don't want to necessarily stop doing IT projects, and they don't want to necessarily stop doing building projects, so that we are going to continue kind of moving forward with thoughtfully looking at the projects that come before Commissioners Court and then realizing which ones we can do and which ones we can't do. But ultimately, we will have to do that skip year in 2020 to backfill some of that and hopefully just be able to do just that 1 year. If in the future we do have an opportunity where we have good property value growth and we don't adjust tax rates, we do need to start moving some of the tax rate to these other funds so that we're not constantly in this position of borrowing. Because just because you do a skip year, that doesn't mean you necessarily changed the fundamental issue that you're exceeding what you're spending on IT from what you're bringing in and allocating for IT.
But I think we all agree we don't want to stop doing IT projects or stop doing building projects, but I think we do want to look at all major expenditure projects, not just positions in certain departments, but projects that we're working on and projects that might be slated to work on to see how to prioritize those. What did we go to the bond market for on that building? Was it 200?
It was 200 million, yeah.
So, we've got that 200 that will be paid, in the future for building improvement that we're doing now. We've got what we're spending. We've got, more and more spending on IT because that's the nature of how the world is moving. Mm-hmm. So if we don't look at our expenditures across the board on those two major items, we know we have to fix the roads, right? So if we don't look at those, I don't know that you're going to find all the money that you need just by laying people off. Maybe there are...
The point of looking at the whole system.
I mean, you are clearly going to have to look at the whole system. Okay. And, at this point in time, you guys, there was dialogue up there about how they like the pay-as-you-go, i.e. the flexibility of having cash-funded projects versus bond-funded projects.
It has served us well.
I don't believe that that's a desire that we want to go down that road of bond funding until the state forces us to, which at some point they may do so.
Yeah. Well, the only reason we could go and do that $200 million at 1.9% is because we didn't have any debt.
And while I didn't include it in the presentation, there are two very large expenditures that we are still batting around and eventually will hit us. One is the radio project.
Right.
The City of Dallas has the two bids. They're still waiting for final design, and then they're going to negotiate with both vendors, interesting enough. But there's been no discussion about them putting that in their bond program, so I guess that means they're going to try to do some sort of vendor financing. That'll be interesting. But at some point, that project will move forward, and there will be an expenditure that Commissioners Court's going to need to look at as it relates to.
We don't have to use vendor financing for our portion, correct?
I wouldn't recommend it for the portion of where we're buying our own hardware. But if they're building the radio tower, then yes, I would recommend we do have, and we would just basically.
And the rate would be as low as we could get in the bond markets. We're double AAA, and they're whatever they are now.
They're AA plus, I believe.
No, that's not.
We'll see how they choose to go, and then there will be a decision point. But it'd be interesting to see how we would do that if we didn't go ahead and do the managed services contract for the portion that we're utilizing of their system. I think the only other way to do that was you guys would write them a big old check and hand it to them, and I don't think that's something we would want to do.
Or a bond.
Well, but yeah, effectively the same thing.
If they're borrowing at 4%, we can borrow at 2%.
I don't think they're going to borrow. I think what they're going to do is they're going to pay about a $10 million annual managed fee for the life of the system.
So they won't own it. They'll
correct. But let's see what they do. But at some point, even if we tag on to what they're doing, we still have about $15 million worth of handheld radios, mobile radios that we'll cash finance for.
Okay.
He smiles.
What's the other project?
And the other one is the elections. The hardware that we use for elections is now getting up there in age. Luckily, it's only used a couple times a year. That's the only reason it's still functioning. But at some point, we are going to have to address that, though I believe Daryl's in discussion with multiple counties and doing that almost as a managed service as well. So.
And you got a letter from me also as well?
Yes, got it.
Anything else?
I think it's
I'll end with the calendar. I'm happy to report that Ermit leaned over and said he can't wait to talk to me about right-sizing his staff.
Awesome.
Well, and when you look at it, the sheriff's department, look at their numbers, look at their turnover rate is about 9.2%. We look at what's going on, again, in juvenile is 13%, in the same identical areas. Identical. We made a comparison to comparison. So we're starting to look in terms of our staff. So it's not just about turns. Again, it's still about managing.
Yes.
When do you expect to have some of the additional numbers that we're going to need, real numbers? Isn't it the middle of July?
Really,
for the appraisal
July
districts?
21st, we get the certified roll from the appraisal
Okay.
district. That's the first really good number of where I can now start building on some solid ground. I will be presenting briefings starting in probably that first Tuesday and third Tuesday in August of any changes or adjustments on staffing as we push for that forward as well. So you'll see those probably through beyond even the beginning of the budget. My guess is there'll be some contingency funded stuff so that we can continue to have the proper timing to look at it properly.
And my spreadsheet?
Your spreadsheet, I'll get it to you.
Thank you.
I think I'm done.
That's it. Consent agenda before us.
We're awake now.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All vote.
Commissioner Cantrell made the motion. Yep. Commissioner Daniels seconded. No, just the opposite. Okay.
Yeah, all right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. We have court orders J1 through 72, addendum 73 and 74, pulling 16, 25, 26, 27 for separate votes, and pulling 13 and 69 for 2 weeks. Is there a...
Hold on.
Can you repeat it?
Back up.
Yeah.
Why are we pulling 13 for 2 weeks?
I'm pulling 13 for 2 weeks.
Because of what?
Dan and I got some information yesterday that was different than the information that we had before, so I'm just pulling it to look at it for 2 weeks, and we'll put it back on.
You got some information that hasn't been disseminated to the rest of us?
I haven't received it. It was,
Or maybe I didn't. Which Dan?
Garza.
I just
are you talking about the SBE program?
Yeah.
No, this is about the janitorial.
No, that's
No,
69.
I'm sorry.
13 is
I'm
SB.
sorry. My bad. I've got the numbers confused. Okay, so on 13, I have sent that out to, several chambers of commerce. The Black Chamber last
I've already talked to them, yeah.
night
But my point
asked for a
is,
little bit
why
more time.
is it, ask for what though?
So they can be heard. We had a meeting probably 6 months ago with them, and they were under the impression that they would be kept in the process. A variety of folks, the Black Chamber, the Hispanic contractors, the Hispanic Chamber, I think the Asian the Greater Dallas Asian Chamber, some other chambers, and everyone that we've heard back from is very complimentary of the program. We've had some suggestions that Daryl and I thought were great suggestions, but we haven't had a chance to hear back from all of them, and at least the Black Chamber has asked for a little bit more time. And so in an effort to have everyone heard so we can have the best process, I'm pulling it for 2 weeks.
Well, first of all, I think it's, I've talked to them as well. I've emailed them. They have no real concerns. They weren't given all the information with regards to the SBE program. Mr. O'Bannon was here earlier. He had to leave, I guess. So they weren't given all the information. Once I gave them all the information, the mapping, the bridging, the whole 9 yards, they understand where we are. It was not explained to them why we're here, and we have no real options on a go-forward basis, legally. And so, I guess that happens when you give, misinformation. But once I gave them all the information, whether it was the president, the chairman of the board, the head of the black contract, they didn't have any problems.
Well, and I just want to add to what Commissioner Price said. You know, they've been in the loop. As a
Yeah,
matter of
they've
fact,
been in the loop.
They're the
because I've been
ones
giving it to
that, you know, help us put this together. But with that being said, Josh, I understand if you have some concerns. It's a privilege, and I will be more than happy to. We just have to move it as fast as possible, Judge.
I don't have concerns as to what I've seen so far. I just want the community to have a chance to look at the information and get back with us.
Okay, so I'll move court orders 1 through 74, excluding court orders 13, 16, 25, 26, 27, and 69.
Correct.
With regards to, Kathy, you back there to answer my question on that?
She's there.
On my concern?
Before we answer questions on concerns, do I have a second yet? I don't think I do.
I'll second.
Okay.
Discussion.
Go ahead.
Which one?
No, Kathy. Did we get that, is that a sole source?
Yes, sir. I mean, we've looked, purchasing looked, I've contacted other offices. This thing appears to be the industry standard. Harris County has it, Bexar County, El Paso, plus any number, probably 20 more around the country. This is on item 59.
On 59?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I should have told you. Of course, let me just tell the court, my problem is that I at least found that the company, with regards to this, is South African. No, that the Bears is part of it,
But it is a sole source. It's the only one that makes the body scanner.
Yeah.
Was that the only one that bid or the only one that manufactures?
It was a discretion exception, sole source procurement, because this company was the only one that can produce that type of X-ray full body scan, and to also maintain the accreditation of the department. So that's why we
So
recommended
it's
it.
the only manufacturer,
That is
it's not
correct.
the only bid.
That's correct.
Yeah, and and I know Dr. Bernard sent you down because he didn't want to hear me screaming about South Africa. But
You won't yell at Kathy. You good?
I just wanted, for the record, I wanted all that explanation on the record. I still want to vote for it, not in second, but I just wanted it to be real clear. We have really no discretion in this matter, and it has everything, and it is tied to their everything, including their accreditation. Our reluctantly.
Judge, Commissioner, we also have a slightly
Is that-
Department of Juvenile would like to pull 30 and 31 also. So right now we have 13, 16, 25, 26, 27, 30, and 31, and 69.
Who pulled this to?
The department, Juvenile Services, pulling 30 and 31.
We yielded to purchasing. Purchasing is going to brief it.
Okay.
So is that, and who made the motion?
I made the
You
motion, and I agree.
Okay, so 30 and 31. I've got a question about one. I can't find it now based on the discussion that we had. So on here somewhere, I think today, is a couple of $1 million in funding for the building at one of the precincts.
Yes, that would be item number 60.
60,
That purchasing
okay.
place
So-
down there.
So all for people doing what they want to do with their road and bridge, because this is road and bridge monies that are being paid. This is being paid for out of the general fund because it's a building, but the transfer to road and bridge.
Yes, it is being paid out of 195 property tax dollars that go in their building side. But there will ultimately be a movement of road and bridge funds to transportation projects in an equal amount so that we can maintain the integrity that we need. Yes.
So, and I'm going to leave it up to, I'm not pulling it, I'm asking, and I'm really leaving it up to Commissioner Daniel because it's your building. With all this and with the concern about the roads, is this one we want to vote on today, or does it need to be looked at more?
This
Or
one
is
is,
it
this
so
one's
far
been,
along
this one's been briefed multiple times to Commissioner's
Well, I
Court. and
know,
this
but
is
now
just
what
the
I'm
bid.
hearing today is whether we may have to have another skip year and all of these concerns about
This doesn't have anything to do with.
Okay, so not a concern.
This actually increases transportation funding by $1.2 million.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
just.
Yeah, that's a, I
Okay.
guess. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
okay. And nothing else, call the question.
you bet.
All right, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And let the record reflect, just from the voice vote, that I reluctantly support 59, because I have no options.
You don't like diamonds?
Could not hear the reluctance in his voice, but I heard it in his comments before,
Yeah.
so the record will reflect that.
I move court order 16.
Second.
16 is what's more on it.
Tech chair.
Tech chair.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Second, let it catch it. Aye.
She's trying to get it out.
We're on 16.
Let's go, pause for a second.
Okay.
Got it? All right, we've had those in favor. Are there any abstentions?
Abstain.
I abstain.
Move court order 25.
Second.
Which one now?
Court
25?
order 25.
Okay, gotcha. Do you want to move the three of them?
Well, they have to do them individually.
Yeah, that'd be all right.
That's right,
She
I
do it
forgot.
the way when you pull them.
But yes, I'd like to do that.
Is there a computer problem, or you got it?
She's just having to pull them out. Once we separate them like that, she's got to go back in there. Yeah, she's got to go back in there and do it. Okay.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any abstentions?
Me?
And I abstain.
Move 26.
Second.
Oh, and I think you might have voted for me, but I did abstain from that. I pushed the abstention button and abstained.
Well, these are all 302.
Yeah.
302. That's you.
Bush?
Commissioner, you're second.
Her price? You
I
second.
seconded it, I'm sorry. Trying to catch that
That's
sneeze
okay.
when I got all the way up here. I got you. Okay. All?
And all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? I abstain.
Move 27.
Second.
And motion carries.
Okay. We're there. 27.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? And again, I believe you may have voted for me again before I could push the button, but I did abstain, not voted for it.
I think you were right.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks you did.
All right. Thank you. And Dr. Garcia, did you vote for that?
I abstained on
Yeah,
all.
and I
But I
think-
did vote it here, so I look at my record,
Yeah,
yes.
you got
fine.
it now?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. You were shown as for just a minute. All right, motion carries 3-0, 3-0-2. All right, I think that concludes our court orders
That was a good agenda.
today. And
I enjoyed myself.
let's see, we'll now consider registered speakers. Will the bailiff please read the rules of decorum for our registered speakers?
All commissioners and court attendees are hereby advised that this meeting is conducted in accordance with provisions of the Dallas County Code, section 74-71. Visitors and registered speakers are to preserve order and decorum at all times. Personal, profane, or slanderous remarks are not appropriate and will not be allowed at any time during this public meeting. Any and all applause is to be kept brief in observance of time constraints. Disruptive visitors and or registered speakers may be removed and are subject to the penalties provided in the State of Texas Penal Code, section 38.13, or 2.01, or 2.05. Registered individual speakers are limited to a maximum of 3 minutes, and the maximum discussion of any one topic is limited to 30 minutes.
All right. And our first public speaker is Miss Brenda Blair. Brenda Blair. Oh, hello, Miss Blair. Miss Blair, in a moment, first, I'm going to give you kind of how this works. In a moment, you'll see a little, looks like a traffic light up there on those screens after you begin to speak. When that turns yellow, you've got 30 seconds left. And when it turns red, that means your time's up. And if you just finish your sentence, then that'd be great. And could you state your name and address for us, ma'am?
Brenda Blair.
Your address, Ms. Blair.
3718 Happy Cane Drive in Dallas, 75241.
Great. Go ahead, ma'am.
Go ahead?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
You can pull that mic to you if you want to.
All right. Well, good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I'm here to share an improper sheriff sale on June the 6th, 2017. And it was due to a wrongful tax case through DCAT. The address of the property is 6318 Tracy Road in Dallas County. Okay, after a questionable judgment, this same property was auctioned off to the highest bidder, which seems okay. This is not my residence, nor has it ever been. This is church property since '52 and has been exempt and by DCAT. It has been exempt since 2011 by DCAT's assumption. Now I am the owner through an invalid quitclaim deed. So on June the 5th, and prior to this sheriff sale, on June the 6th, an original petition was timely filed on June the 2nd. Okay, this was a temporary injunction requesting, it was a temporary injunction request, period. The temporary injunction was not designed to deny legitimate delinquent taxes, but to give at least a proper hearing first before the sheriff's sale. However, this legal request was usurped by Tim Davis, number 276 of the writs enforcement. I guess that's the department. He was timely served on June the 5th, purposely, and served for this service on the same day. I was shocked at his spiteful, arrogant, contemptuous action. This sheriff sale was his independent action of defiance of a court order. His action appeared to me as even biased and not just a job duty. Perhaps the commissioners and the administrative staff will take note of this defiance and irresponsible court order, which is DC 17-06543. And then I just have a final question. Will there be any follow-up to this issue?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank
I
you.
got somebody coming down.
Okay.
It's an audition. I just want to get the information. I can't talk to you about it, but they're going to come down and get all of your information, then we'll follow through.
Thank you.
And I'll Shay, if you'll work with whoever, and let's find out about that. But thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Okay, thank you.
And our next speaker is Ms. Desiree Howard.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Judge Jenkins, Commissioners. I have some documents I'd like each of you.
He's going to help us bring them up. So same thing I told her about the little little traffic signal thing. 30 seconds is yellow, red, just finish your sentence. And start off by stating your name and address, please.
Yes, sir. My name is Desiree Howard. My address is 2421
Thank you.
South Carrier Parkway, Grand Prairie, Texas 75051.
Okay. Well, go ahead now.
Okay. First, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. And it concerns me that the Dallas County Court Family Violence Division, I'm a little nervous, is denying equally accessible domestic violence resources to victims who have pending charges in the Dallas County courts. I was assaulted last year in October 2016 by a man. So in return, after charges were filed against him and he was indicted on this felony charge, I went down to apply for a protective order. I received my protective order packet in the mail, which suggested that Frank Crowley would be able to assist me with that process. Excuse me. So I went down. I signed in to participate so I could file for protective order. And I was addressed by an investigator on that floor with a gun on their hip. And they escorted me off the floor, stating that I wasn't allowed to be there because I'm a person being charged with a different, I don't know how to explain it. I just couldn't be on that floor based on my experiences prior to that. So I've come here today because I'm aware that the Dallas County Commissioner works closely with the District Attorney's Office, maybe not necessarily in this capacity, but I believe that the positions you hold as elected officials in our community have the ability to investigate and or persuade that this policy be changed. All victims, no matter their gender, race, ethnic background, pending criminal charges have the right to be protected. Per the criminal procedure article, let me make sure I quote it correctly. Article 56.02, Crime Victims' Rights, states that any victim of a crime is supposed to or is to receive adequate protection from harm and threats of harm arising from cooperating with prosecution efforts. Also, under the Equal Protection Clause, which is a part of the 14th Amendment, I'm super nervous, of the United States Constitution, it states that this clause outlines that under the United States Constitution, no state shall deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal to protection of laws. The charge in question, I'm not here to debate the legalities of my outstanding charge, just basically as a voice for other victims in my community who may be facing this same problem. The protective order that was being sought was completely unrelated to the need for one. I mean, unrelated to the charge pending. So my understanding from speaking to a law ethics professor and my criminal justice department chair at my college is that this shouldn't be happening in our community, and I would humbly ask that you look into this matter. Thank you.
I've got a question for you. And your complaint, is it mostly that the district attorney on the civil side didn't help you get a civil?
We don't. Civil side doesn't do protective orders.
Yeah. Is that your complaint?
No, the DA's office. There are protective orders over there. We're not even supposed to be talking about this because it's not on the agenda.
Can't engage it. It's a violation.
Well, I don't think it's a violation to I'm trying to understand I understand what her complaint is, but I just want to make sure I understand what your complaint is.
She wasn't able to file it.
I'm sorry?
You weren't able to file it.
I wasn't able to what?
To file your...
No, I was denied the...
Yeah, but the problem is you can't talk. If you're going to get, just like we did in the other one, you just get somebody to go talk to them.
Yeah.
Can you talk to Mr.
Please
Love
do
and
talk to
Shay?
Shay Cathy so that we can better understand your
Different than the other
complaint.
one. Just get somebody to go talk to them.
Yes, sir. If I may, just 5 more seconds. I was referred down to apply for a civil protective order because they denied me the ability to apply for the criminal protective order pro se.
I understand.
Yeah,
Right.
got you now.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank you for your time anyways. Thank you.
Mr. Love will talk to you right there with Miss Kathy. Yeah.
I got it.
Couldn't understand exactly. I happened to listen to me. I couldn't
Yeah, I
understand
couldn't
exactly
understand
what. And it's a letter I...
Okay, so we're now going to go to closed session to consider matters under Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code as previously posted, Any action as a result of the closed session will take place in the subsequent open session. We'll begin our closed session in 1 minute.